All right, great. So it is March 18th, and this is day 2 of the de-escalation workshop for the Joint Office COVID-19 response. My name is Alexandra Appleton, and I have just pushed record, and I am currently requesting consent from 2 parties on the line. Mackenzie, do you mind unmuting and stating your name and providing consent for this recording?
My name's Mackenzie Schreiner, and I provide consent for this recording.
Thank you, Mackenzie. And then Central, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And Central, are y'all able to unmute over there? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna let them figure it out, and I'm pretty sure that they will catch the grift, and then I'll do a couple reminders. Thank you, and I will hop on shortly. I'm just getting everything organized. I'm happy you are all here. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? We're good? We got like 25 people in here. My name is Alexandra Appleton. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Shelter Equity and Inclusion Analyst for the Joint Office. And some of my job responsibilities are implementing equity efforts, including workshops and providing technical assistance. Again, today is March 18th, and this is the second day of our de-escalation workshop. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you to the folks that were joined yesterday, and to the folks that have returned today. I really appreciate it. As we know, de-escalation is a strategy that will allow us to remain in control at times and support a lot of folks anywhere with a lot of types of issues, and avoid wrong responses, which can make situations worse. We're looking forward to sharing another day of trauma-informed de-escalation techniques and organizational resilience, and today's event will be recorded for programming purposes. Today, I'll start in a similar fashion to yesterday with a moment to acknowledge the history of how we are here in this space and place and honor the people. And we will use a land acknowledgement as a tool to dismantle colonialism and that manifests and in this rooms and outside of these rooms. So I will start with that. Multnomah County rests on the stolen lands of the Multnomah, Klamath, and Clackamas bands of Chinook Indian Nation, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many others along the Columbian River. This country is built on stolen indigenous land and built by stolen African people. This land was not stolen, and people were not enslaved by ambiguous entities or actors. The land was stolen by, and African peoples were enslaved by white settlers who had government support. We also want to honor the members of over 400 tribal communities who live in Multnomah County. Many of these people and their cultures still survive and resist despite the intentional and ongoing attempts to destroy them. So obviously, I'll jump right into it. De-escalation is a behavior that's intended to prevent escalation of conflicts. The intention is to introduce just the guiding principles of conflict resolution and crisis intervention. Today, we are going to switch it up for our introductions because we want to make sure that we get as much time as we possibly can. How about folks just put their names, their pronouns, and their sites in the chat if they are able to. If you are unable to, feel free to unmute. And I have folks on the line that will be glad to probably put your information in there. But can we please just use the chat for today? Don't worry, we have plenty of activities and engagement for all of us to kind of talk to each other and discuss and introduce ourselves and share our stories. But for today, we're just going to do the quick round of introductions. And that's even more important because I get a report from Google about this recording, and that will document that you have attended this training. I mean, I'll try to do some gentle reminders of folks on their way in to make sure that they place their name in there. Again, it's name, pronouns, and site. Thank you very much. And anything else that you want to put in there that's productive. So one thing that I also forgot to mention yesterday is that the Workday pay code for training time is ETO1, and I will put that in the chat. So it's ETO1. And I don't want y'all to get stressed out because I know ETO is something. It's a little a force of its own, but training is important. ETO, pay code in ETO is ETO1. And I will just continue to remind y'all gently, but no worries, okay? So real quick, yesterday we were unable to get to racial justice and to nonviolent crisis intervention. However, what we were able to cover, sorry, I just want to get my notes right, is we covered a lot. I discussed conflict, the role that perception plays during conflict and how it can influence the way a person reacts and handles themselves. We discussed common barriers to effective communication and the 3 needs to be addressed to begin to resolve conflict. Mia came around and discussed ways to deal with conflict, including conflict resolution. Mia mentioned 5 conflict resolution styles, 2 conflict resolution approaches, and then Mia's presentation also covered the importance of creating safer spaces for folks, staff, and guests alike. And we learned about trauma-informed care, empathetic listening, strength-based approach, and cultural humility. And then Ria came through on us and tapped us all off with assertive engagement, and talking about assertive engagement and how to put that into practice in community-based organizations. And I really, she mentioned the history and put that into the social work context of COVID-19, and listed the 3 sets of assertive engagement, the mind, body, and set as a friendly reminder, and the power of offering reflections and being aware of our own bias, and then managing our anger. We topped off the workshop with some mindfulness in discord. One of the things that I really valued yesterday, there was a lot of knowledge in the room. Yesterday, folks were able to blend together varied ideas and experiences, and we encourage folks to continue this momentum, challenge by choice, choose what you got to do, and attempt to be open to new topics and techniques, and to be curious and to learn and lean into discomfort and share techniques and ask questions. All right, let's get this. All right, so here's a little quote, but before I jump into the quote, I just wanted to take a little moment because I felt really inspired yesterday for multiple reasons. And if I can, do y'all mind if I just take about 2 minutes to share something with y'all? Okay, cool. So, and this is a little bit about my journey. So in 2015, I just got out of a shelter. I was pregnant and I had a job, and I had just moved from the shelter into my own housing. So I thought I was good, right? A month after I moved into housing, they took my job away because of my lived experience. I have barriers to employment. And so then that dropped me right back into homelessness. Mind you, I had experienced 15 years of chronic homelessness, right? So I finally got on top, and then they took it all away from me. And I was pregnant with my 3rd baby, and I didn't know what to do. Long story short, I went back to school, which was just, I felt very shameful about that. I was 30 years old and I was going back to school. I just felt a lot of shame. I put in the work though. Somebody passed me an application in 2015, and it was to be a part of the Home for Everyone Coordinating Board. The Home for Everyone Coordinating Board is very important to us. Why? Because the Home for Everyone Coordinating Board kind of makes a lot of decisions on what the joint office does. I became a community member on that board. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. All I had is majority of street cred and lived experience, but I hopped on that board. I never imagined that being on that board, that less than 6 years later, that I would be sitting here and leading a de-escalation workshop for folks that are similar to me, that are social workers. So that is very inspiring to me. And I just want to touch base on just 2 other things. Katie, in 2017, after I graduated, Katie Chickadons and I started at the same entity on the same date in the same position. That's 2017. That's 4 years ago. We started same date, same position, wellness access, making $16 an hour. We did mental health, and substance resources in the low barrier shelters. They were at Hanson, and I was at Willamette. And that's what we did. Okay. And Katie learned my strengths. I learned their strengths. And then we just ended up fitting in where we fit in. Along that journey, I ran into Donald. Donald was at the Hanson. Donald and I did union equity work. We were both stewards, and we came and brought up equitable practices to leadership. And so that's how I know Donald. Meanwhile, I know Chris because Chris was running the resource center at TPI. Chris holds it down. I remember the very first time I went to Chris's de-escalation workshop, and I was thinking about how Chris and Donald, they interrupt all the stigmas that are here in society about what Black men can be and how they operate and navigate these worlds. Ria, I want to touch base on Ria and Mia, and then I'll just sum it up. Ria Rhea was the first Black woman at the joint office. She ran the front desk. She was right under Mark. Rhea did everything for Mark. She ran the joint office for the very first couple of years. So think about the level of skill that is coming in here and trying to share this knowledge with you. Mia, I met Mia literally 6 weeks ago, and Mia has hopped on board with my envision. She has met me where I'm at. She has like inspired me and developed me. And I just say all this to say that like I met all these folks less than 4 years ago, and we were all in the same similar predicament, working in shelters. We were working just like you, trying to figure it out. There were some things that were not working. There were some things that were working, but we used with what we had. And it is just so amazing that we are here now all together. We didn't know that we were going to come together like this. The joint office has only been open for 5 years, y'all. We are creating history. This is the very first time that the joint office is running shelter services. We're not going to get it right, but this is actually the very first time that we're having an actual de-escalation workshop. And so like that's really inspiring to me, just to be here and for all of us to be together and to be sharing this wealth, because I figure like we're all broadening our social capital. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm sparked. I'm so excited right now. I can't believe I made it, but I made it and I'm able to like be here and share with y'all. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey and tell you about the wonderful people that are helping us do this training. And there's a lot more to my journey in regards to the interactions that I've had with these individuals and with the ways that we've helped us find upward mobility within systems that are automatically set up to oppress you. You have to find a way, go through it, over it, and around it. And that's my philosophy. And I think that y'all should know that about me since I have so many people in here at the same time. So I'll step back, I'll fall back because we're going to pass it off to Chris after I do the agenda. But real quick, I'll read the quote on the slide. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is not different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging our carcasses of prejudice and hatred or avarice and our data banks and dead ideas, or dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly and little luggage, ready to imagine another world. Sorry, like it's like this small on my thing. All right, cool. Well, I like that. And you should check out the author. She has a lot of great work out there and she's a political activist. So let's go to the agenda real quick and we can get this started. Okay, so real quick, one thing that I didn't cover was that the workshop does not encourage like to break up fights or techniques that for folks that are already out of control. This just needs to be like an inclusive discussion around strategies for mitigating situations from escalating and addressing escalations. The space is not meant for a process group either. If a situation does come up and that is, or if you've experienced a situation, please reach out to your leadership and management that are on the line. Send me an email. Let's figure it out. Today's agenda has switched up, and so what we're going to do is I am about to tap off, and from 1:15 to 2:30, we're going to do nonviolent crisis intervention, and I'm going to allow that to kind of roll over if necessary, but we will have one 15-minute break, and then we're going to roll into an activity that's what would you do if, and Donald and I will be leading that, and then Nia will follow up with what to do after an event. We'll have another short break, 15 minutes, and then we will cap off with safety on the job. Does that all sound good for folks? Okay, cool. Another thing about it is that the racial justice component will be coming, and we're going to wrap that up with the behavior continuum guidelines, so then we can help folks with behavior continuum guidelines and then loop in the racial justice moment. We thought that might be a better strategy considering our time and the time that we have today. Come as you are, be trauma informed, recognize the prevalence of trauma, Recognize its effects on all individuals within the organization and the team. Resist re-traumatization during this training or workshop and other times, and respond by putting this knowledge that you learned today into practice. I will provide a trigger warning because there will be some videos today, and so we want you to take care of yourselves. We have done our best to identify all of the materials that would potentially have triggering content, and we will include verbal warnings and tags for any violence, racism, misogyny, or self-harm. If you have concerns about encountering anything specific in the course material, then please reach out before, during, and after, and I will do my best to let you all know in advance. Another short just support idea is just recognizing the vicarious trauma that we have as we witness the pain and fear and terror that trauma staff and guests that have endured. We just need to be cognizant of the emotional residue of the exposure to trauma that can be. So please step back, take a moment, do what you got to do. Tap in, tap out. This will be recorded, and I think now it's time to hand off to Chris. Chris, are you ready? I can stop presenting.
Yeah. Hey, Alexandra, I'm going to get my screen situated real quick, and then I will present.
Thank you. Welcome.
All right. Well, regardless, I'm going to be looking on my left screen here because that's where the slides are at. But it's good to meet all of you. Good to see all of you. Thank you, Alexandra, for the amazing words and just laying yourself out there and just really showing that real people are doing this work and leading this work. I think it's so easy when you're working on the ground to feel like those in power are disconnected from the work, and often that is true. And I think that we're changing that. Yeah, just a little bit about where I'm coming from. In 2010, I started case managing at a veteran shelter on 2nd and Burnside, where Safes was. So that was with a lot of veterans, combat veterans returning from current conflict, people returning from incarceration. Did that for about 6 years. And then, as Alexandra said, was managing transition projects day center for about 3 years. So my baseline is de-escalation in a space that has a capacity of about 150, a milieu space. And we served, at the time that I was manager, about 700 people a day in Old Town Chinatown. So, we're talking breaking up fights, which we don't condone doing, de-escalating people with knives and other homicidal instruments, and, crisis intervention when it comes to critical incidents, resuscitations, Narcan, and then facilitating staff in that space. So what the material that I have to present here is from that lens. And I'm going to lean on Donald and his follow-up, and Alexandra and Katie, Brittany, just to frame it for the work that you all are doing. So that is my lens, and I really appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to present here. So I'm going to attempt to share here. All right. We all see where it says de-escalation. Am I live? All right. So this is an adaptation of what I would offer at transition projects as their agency trainer, but I'm reversing it because let's do some grounding. When we talk about challenging behavior and we're trying to be professional when we're talking about it, we say people are trying to get their needs met. So here's a list of those needs that people are trying to get met. And any one of these, when you're lacking these, you get a little testy. So I just want to frame things in this way to understand the human behind the behavior that is challenging that you're experiencing. Lack of acceptance, community, exercise, peace. I mean, I think about peace a lot because we're in this pandemic. Talk about being houseless. There's a lot of dis-ease with that. You don't know where you're going to live, but then you stack a pandemic onto it. You stack all of the areas that people were able to generally receive services or find community. Those are shut down. Peace is in short supply these days. So when we think about de-escalation and you think about the human behind the behavior. Think about what need is not being met. So I want to start just laying out this framework of something called nonviolent communication by a guy named Dr. Rosenberg. So that has 4 components: observing without evaluating. So this is the framework that you have in your mind. This is about reordering the way that you think about things so that you can see the person in front of you more clearly. So you're observing the behavior that's in front of you without evaluating what it is. You're not trying to name it. You're not trying to put it in a box. You're just observing the actions that are happening in front of you, the words that are being said. You're identifying and expressing the feelings that you're seeing. There's facts and feelings. Those are the things that are important, not your opinions. So, okay, they seem angry. All right, they seem a little resentful. They seem hurt. You take responsibility for your own feelings. Are you coming to work charged today? Are you coming to work sad today? Did you have an argument? Did you stub your toe? Did you get robbed? Like, what happened before you showed up to work? Take ownership for your own feelings before you step on the floor of whatever space you're going to work to serve others, because that's going to get in the way of offering equitable and trauma-informed services. So you just want to be honest with yourself, and you want to stay present as best as possible. We are all human, but we're just identifying what we would hope would be the best self that we could be at work. We're staying present. We're observing feelings. We're observing behaviors, and we're taking responsibility for our own actions. There's 2 parts of the system. And let me say, this guy created a system, and I'm just pulling from this book. I would say go read the book. I'm not an expert trainer on this. I just find a lot that I resonate with this system. 2 parts of nonviolent communication, if we're going to do it effectively, is we want to have empathy. Sounds like you talked about that yesterday. And again, you want to be honest. You want to be honest with yourself. You want to be honest with the people that you're working with, that you're interacting with, and you want to be empathetic. So I think there's 2 different words that sound alike. I like to think about empathy, obviously, as we talk about sympathy versus empathy. So you can feel what the person's feeling, possibly because you experienced it yourself. Empathic feeling, I want to just drop that out there. Empathic feeling for folks is kind of, you can perceive what they would feel. It's different than sympathy. It's empathic. You're opening your heart up, not to be too esoteric. You're opening your heart up to potentially feel what they're feeling, even if you've never experienced it. So think about empathy and empathic feeling almost interchangeably, because if you haven't experienced it and what someone is presenting in front of you, you can't have empathy. So I would say lean on your ability to be empathic with folks. Open your heart, open your mind, and try to feel what they're feeling so that you can aid them in whatever situation is happening. And also, I need to apologize. This is the first time presenting this digitally. It's a lot easier when you're in a group of people for some reason. So I want to throw these other pieces out there just to put in the back of your mind. Communication that blocks compassion. Diagnosis. Oh yeah, that person's got bipolar. That person's manic depressive. Oh, I think they're suicidal. Diagnosis. That's going to block your ability. We may think it helps because you're putting things in a box, but that's not helpful to seeing the whole person that's in front of you. Denial of responsibility. Look, that's not my job. That blocks compassion in a situation because you're already pulling yourself away from being empathic and empathetic to the moment. Demand. We're not in a position to make demands of people. That speaks to an air of punishment. Okay, what if I don't? Demands are really not helpful in establishing healing communication with folks. And then deserve. Are you showing up at work thinking, I deserve to be respected today? I deserve to be treated fairly. That's going to get in the way of you being able to be open to seeing people as they are and handling situations as they come about. So this is Dr. Rosenberg. He seems like kind of a dark Mr. Rogers to me. So he's got 2 puppets. We've got a jackal on one side and a giraffe on the other. So if we were doing a training on nonviolent communication, people have these props, they put them on their head and whatnot. And so the idea is that the giraffe is open-hearted. This is the compassionate, empathic, empathetic animal. And then you've got the jackal that is attacking. So this guy apparently would sit up there and have puppets and model ways of hearing and speaking to one another. And here's just some kind of a framework. So if you've got the jackal ears in, that means you're being abusive to yourself, essentially. You're aggressive towards yourself. You're casting shame and guilt on yourself. You can see that in that first line there. You've got the jackal ears out. You're accusing people of what people are doing. You're angry, you're defensive, you're aggressive with them. What we want to be is we want to have those giraffe ears on. We want to be open-hearted with ourselves and the people that we're interacting with. You're centering on feelings and needs that are not being met, not only with yourself, but the people that we're serving. So you can see how there's opportunity to frame your words differently, not only for your self-talk, but for the way that you interact with others. So this is just a real quick overview of nonviolent communication that I love throwing out there. Here's the crisis intervention piece. I should pause. Any thoughts, questions, reflections on that? I have a tendency to talk fast and just push through. So Alexandra, my apologies if I go quickly and run short of time. So how crisis evolves and is managed. On one side, we've got the participant behavior. On the other side, we have staff responses, how we ought to respond to it. If we're going to, at every step of escalation, try to minimize the potential that what is happening in front of us will become a crisis. So you've got a participant or a group of participants in front of you. Their behavior, it's exhibiting anxiety or dis-ease. If people feel able to unmute, what are some examples of, what are some things that you would see that would note to you that someone is experiencing anxiety or dis-ease?
I would say like fidgeting around, unable to like concentrate on one thing.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, fidgeting around, sometimes pacing. I'm sorry, was someone else going to talk?
Yeah, my apologies. I was just going to add to that. Yeah, being very uncertain if they want to do, like, they want to take a breath of fresh air or just sit down for a moment. Just like uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else I like to reflect on is knowing someone's baseline. So you're working in shelter environments. And so you get to know the folks that you're working with and you get to establish what their baseline is. How are they normally? Yeah, tapping, twisting hands or feet, erratic breathing. So let's just say someone's baseline is they're amped all the time. They're ready to go. They're in a positive mood. You see them the next day and they're flat. That's also a sign of dis-ease. So knowing someone's baseline, I'll just reflect on someone that used to come into the day center. They were always in it. They're always engaged. They're always positive. They were high energy. But then when they came in and they were flat, you know something was about to happen. So knowing people's baseline is important to being able to identify anxiety and dis-ease. We all act differently. We're all the same like human ecosystem. But we act differently. Our spirits channel differently through our bodies and the way that we act. So what may look like anxiety for one person is actually self-comfort for another. And self-comfort doesn't mean that they're anxious. It just means that that's the way they keep their personal ecosystem. So I just want to highlight that everyone is different. And so establishing a baseline for the folks that we serve is helpful with each other too. True words. So participant behavior, anxiety, dis-ease. Staff response, we need to be supportive and have healing curiosity. You know, what's going on today? How are you doing? What do you got going on today? You know, what's happened before you showed up here? What's on your mind? Not, why are you acting that way? Is everything all right? You know, that kind of stuff, that's going to make someone more anxious. It all depends on your relationship with them. So I'll trust your intuition about who you are as a person, the relationship that you've established with them, but you want to have a healing curiosity. You want to draw those things out of them to help them engage and build rapport with you. You're supportive in that moment. So again, this is going to show the escalation process. Our hope is that we keep every step that we're about to go over at bay through our staff response, and it doesn't get to the next one. To be fair, sometimes you can do everything right and it will still go south. And again, don't have the jackal ears in. You want to be gentle with yourself. You know you did the right thing. You did the best you can do. It's out of your hands. There are precipitating factors to what's happening in front of you. You can just accept that. Defensiveness, pushing back. That's that next step. They're anxious. You start having to, say, hey, it's curfew, or hey, can I have you go over there? Can you please not talk to this person this way? Whatever it is that you have to have as directives in the spaces that you're working, people start getting defensive. They start pushing back on what you're saying. By the way, that star over there is to note that this is where the majority of our work takes place with de-escalation. We're going to zone in or zoom in on it later. So people are defensive. They're pushing back. They're saying, why do I have to do this? They're just being oppositional. Our response is to offer clear directives and offer limits. We want to give people choices. We're dealing with folks who have had choice stripped from them, potentially since before birth. And we can empower folks by offering choices, even when we have to be redirecting them or executing a consequence or whatever. We can still offer choice and agency. So we offer clear directives and set limits. And if that doesn't work, now we're looking at risky or harmful actions. If people are comfortable, I'd be curious to hear how this manifests in the spaces that you're working in. What are some risk behaviors that you have seen?
It wasn't with a guest, but at the Jupiter, sometimes we have folks that wander in off the street, and we might have a moment of confrontation when we're trying to communicate with them that it's an isolation shelter and we need them to move on. We actually had a situation the other day where there was a guy that was getting kind of agitated. It seemed like maybe he wasn't totally in touch with the same reality that we were experiencing, and was throwing his body against the glass and stuff like that. And one of our coworkers offered him a bottle of water and kind of coaxed him to walk off the property before that situation escalated.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? Posture, direct violence.
Hector over here. I noticed that there's a lot of lashing out that happens. Like a person who could be calm the next day, it's just raging. If that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And I'm seeing in the chat here as well, people talking about posturing, direct violence, pushing over objects, slamming doors. Absolutely. Those things are escalated, risky, potentially harmful behaviors to themselves or others. Our step is physical intervention. Now, to be clear, as Alexandra stated, we're not talking about putting hands on people. So we can only do what we can do within our rules of engagement. So an example of this, and I know, Alexandra, you kind of talked about trigger warnings, so I'll reduce how graphic this was in reality. And I believe this is before you were manager at the center, or maybe you were manager, but someone attempted suicide with a pair of scissors at the front desk of the shelter, and they had been expressing suicidal ideation leading up to that. So when I'm talking about risky or harmful behaviors and physical intervention, here's an example of not necessarily how someone failed to prevent it, but how we could prevent that in the future. You see someone getting escalated, you see someone maybe speaking a lot about self-harm, maybe bring them into another space away from other folks. That's physical intervention. Maybe take the scissors off the table. That's physical intervention. Think about physical intervention as making sure that the space is more safe for that individual and individuals around them. So that's what I mean here by physical intervention. When people are doing risky or harmful behaviors, let's say someone is thrashing about outside of out of a building and maybe making a ton of threats. Maybe we can shut the door and lock the door. Physical intervention. So after that all goes down, potentially maybe you have to call public safety officers because there's, threat of some kind of fatal or grievous harm or some kind of other criminal act being threatened. Or maybe they calmed down, they stopped throwing things, they broke the window, they threw the chair, but now they're calming down. They're regaining their composure. Maybe they're apologizing. Maybe in that process, you were calm and you allowed them to blow off steam. Granted, they maybe caused property destruction. Regardless of what happened, when their composure is regained, when that tension has been reduced, our job is to really deliver trauma-informed care. We continue to maintain a therapeutic rapport with that person, no matter what they've said to you, no matter what they've done. Our job while you're at work here is to maintain therapeutic rapport and deliver trauma-informed care for folks. Has anyone seen these steps evolve in someone? And I would like to hear someone talk about how after an incident has happened, how they moved through that to continue establishing a therapeutic rapport with the participant.
Hector over here again. So whenever like situations would happen in the shelters I worked at, I always kind of like advise that we take it as two maximum people, 2 staff members to go try to de-escalate the person. The other personnel could like make sure that the other guests are safe. And that's one tactic that has really helped throughout this journey of de-escalating people.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, this is Shayla from Central. I can think of a lot of different examples, but when something goes down with a guest and they're escalated and we do the de-escalation, everything kind of calms down, I usually try to check in with that person again, not to smother them, but give them some space. Or like, when I show up the next day, I anticipate them possibly anticipating me to be acting some sort of way or acting different, treating them differently because of what they've done or something. And, I just keep that demeanor of like, still here to help. Nothing has really changed, not judging. And then also following up with staff if I'm in a lead position afterwards and making sure that, I offer if they need to process anything that I'm available for that. And that helps everybody be just as cohesive too, so that guest does feel like, okay, this is safe still, because there's a lot of shame, I think, with outbursts too. And I try to mitigate that as well.
Yeah, great point.
One thing I've done before when I worked at Central City Concern was I asked one of my coworkers to step in. I just stepped out, like, you're obviously really frustrated with me right now, and I'm not really the point. So I'm gonna have one of my coworkers step in and smooth the surface a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds wise. Know when you need to ask for help. Any other input people want to offer? Any reflections on things they've had to deal with or ways that they've moved through this? Shayla, I want to kind of expand on what you said there about, the people come in the next day and they think that you might still be mad. And folks are really looking at us to keep that same energy. We say, hey, we're here to be helpful. We're here to, be trauma informed, all of that stuff. In the back of their minds, they're still wondering to some degree, well, are you still going to be that way when things get bad? Maybe they're not thinking that exactly, but we have this opportunity to show them that we really mean it when these rough times come. I cannot tell you enough how many times when there was a massive fight or something in the day center, um, you can see people watching you. Alexandra, I know you know this too. When you're getting in the middle of a situation, people are sitting on the sidelines. They're watching you, right? They know what everyone else is about. They're watching you. They're wondering what you're about, you know? And so, Shayla, like you said, we have this opportunity to show them that we really mean it, that this is for real, and that we're here to help no matter what. So I really appreciated you sharing that. So things to consider with this escalation continuum here: setting limits, just ways to do this, just some basic guidance. We want to make sure that we're being direct and reasonable. We want to make sure that we can back it up. You don't, and I think a lot of the ways that I would think about this again is relative to crisis situations where unfortunately, people have to be called, that are, emergency services have to be called. And you'll have staff who are very potentially afraid in a situation, and they'll say, I'm going to call the cops or whatever. That doesn't help at all. But if you're going to say something, make sure that you can either back it up or that you're going to do it. No one wants empty words. Options, ways to set limits: interrupt and redirect. Someone's yelling at you. Hey, I'm sorry. Can we move over to this other room? I got to stop you right here. I need you to maybe stop using that language. Or when and then. When you stop yelling at me, then we can have a conversation. Or if you stop yelling at me, then I can help you get this need met. These are ways that we can set limits creatively. Supportive stance. This is something that we would go over if we were doing this in person. So this is one of the diagrams out of one of the training modules for de-escalation that people use globally. The supportive stance. So you've got one foot in front of the other. You've got one at a 45 degree angle, and a lot of people think it looks like a fight stance, but your hands are down. You're in a non-threatening posture. There are reasons for this. It communicates respect. Because you're not squaring off with them. You're not being dismissive and looking away from them. It's non-threatening as long as your hands are held appropriately. And it maintains safety, because sort of worst case scenario, someone pushes past you. If you're on your heels, you're going to get knocked down or knocked into a wall. But it makes you a smaller target, so to speak, and it allows you to maintain balance. Just keep this in the back of your mind when you're standing talking to folks, and find a way to do this for yourself. Obviously, we can't physically practice here right now, and I'm not about to get up and show you. So also consider, where are you in relation to other people? Who's behind you? How close to them are you? How are you moving and holding your body? This obviously is very important in congregate spaces. Are you walking around, puffed up? Some people may read that like you're looking for a fight or like you're scared. Are you walking around with your shoulders curled? Are you sheepish? Are you scared? Like, a lot of things can be read a lot of different ways. So be conscious of how you're moving and holding your body. Hard to show, but I think it's helpful to have composure, but also meekness. And I think that's different for different folks. I remember Donald, actually, if I can speak to you on this, I'd love your input on how things have evolved for you as you've gone to different positions. I remember when we were doing this training and I talked about how I moved through the day center, and you said, with all due respect, that looks like weakness coming from where I come from. And I appreciate that. What are your reflections on how you move and hold yourself in these spaces?
So, yes, how's it going? I'm Donald. Something's wrong with my camera. Oh, there it is. There we go. Yes, I remember that. It was holding my head down. And, when I started doing this, holding your head down or cowering or anything of that nature was a pride thing for a person like me growing up in the environment that I had. So, I waited to the end of the class and I said, "Hey, Chris, I don't cower for nobody. Is there any other tactics or ways that we can go about this?" And over the years of my experience, it's not so much cowering. It's just, we talked about a little bit yesterday, situational awareness, kind of knowing where you're at, how your body is, how you're standing, how you're presenting to this person that's in this traumatic state or elevated state. Just being mindful of your presence more or less than cowering. And that's pretty much what Chris told me. And from there on, I was able to kind of see how that works for me specifically, sit down, take a few steps back. I don't look as big if I'm a little bit further back, makes me feel skinny too. But now that we're in a pandemic, we got to stay 6 feet back anyway, so that helps as well. But I more took it personal than how effective it would be in the situation that we were in or in the situations that come about. So I learned a lot. And now moving through the environments and the spaces that we work in, I'm mindful of that. And like I said, sometimes I'll just sit down, talk to them, take a few steps back. Is my hands open or closed? Just situational awareness of the space that I'm in when things are going on. Does that help?
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we are all different. And we got to find what works for us and ultimately feels respectful to the people we're working with and be able to be chameleons to the moment while still being authentic, because people can smell fake too. How do you use your voice? Make sure you're aware of your tone, volume, and the cadence. Cadence is that rhythm. I think some people talk fast. I feel like I'm talking real slow right now. And it would drive me crazy if I was listening to me. So, I'll try and pick it up. But, I think we just figure out what works for the people that we're dealing with: tone, volume, and cadence. Just be aware of your instruments, like your body, your whole being, all of the way that you can communicate is an instrument to deliver that care. The way you move your hands, the way you move your eyes, the way you move your head, every single thing about you in a physical space is an instrument to deliver care. And people read body language. I think one of the most impactful things from working in the realm of veterans was working with incarcerated folks. You stack on top of boot camp and military experience, often combat, incarceration in a pool full of sharks, and people learn respect and they learn how to communicate non-verbally and how to read body language. And so it would behoove us to take that dead serious and to understand that whether you believe in these institutions or not, people have that as their template for what delivers life and death. And so we want to take these things seriously, and realize that the way that we communicate respect to them may not be the same way that we would receive respect. So learn about the people you're dealing with. And I'm not saying be fake. I'm just saying understand how your voice, your gestures, your body positioning communicate respect to the people that we're serving and to each other. So now we're zooming in on the defensiveness and the pushing back. And our directive is to be more clear, or to be more clear and directive. So this escalates in and of itself as well. And I think I framed it as this is where the majority of our de-escalation work is going to take place. People are questioning. So when they're defensive, they're questioning. It's the, why do I have to do this? Or it's the, there's two types of questioning. Let's put it that way. People are either challenging you, why do I got to do this? Or what time's curfew? Or when is the meal? No matter how many times they've asked you that, if they're asking you a rational question, give them a rational response. If they're challenging you, you just want to make sure that you downplay the challenge, you set limits, and you just be clear. So I like to say you answer graciously. You know, no matter how you feel about it, no matter if you think they're trying to get under your skin, you're at work, answer graciously. Be clear, be direct, be gracious. They may just outright refuse. That's that next level. So now we define boundaries. That's where we're setting limits. We talked about that earlier. People are refusing to do something. I don't know how you all do exclusions or what the program guidelines are. So fill that in for yourself. But people are refusing to follow policy, even if it's as simple as I need you to walk away, and people are refusing. You lay out the options that that person has before them, and as we said with setting limits, make sure you're going to back it up. Now people get to that release phase. So we're not talking physical action here yet, but they're releasing. They're yelling at you. They may be gesturing wildly. You hold space and listen. Holding space is one of those weird things where it sounds kind of fluffy, but I think hold space also has a really, really grounded piece to it too physically. So when we're talking about how you move and hold your body, hold space, hold a space of peace, be a conduit of peace in that moment. You're not fidgeting, you're not shaking like a leaf, you're holding space. Someone's screaming at you. I think everyone here probably has been yelled at work in this environment, and you hold space. You keep your face compassionate. You listen to the facts and feelings of what's being screamed at you, and you hold your space, hold the space of peace and listen. And as you're listening, listen for the facts and listen for the feelings. Listen for what they're telling you about why they're upset. Identify the feeling that they're expressing, and then you can reflect it back to them. And they'll feel like they were heard. Maybe they'll move to intimidation, God forbid. So at this point, like several of you said, you bring in team members. At that point, what about conversation movers? Some people move when they talk. I want to hear more about that. You bring in team members. A lot of you said that. And if someone's intimidating you, you take every threat seriously. Oh no, that's just Johnny. He always makes the bomb threats. No, we take all threats seriously. Part of that is also helping people develop and grow and be prepared to return to quote unquote civilization. We're not helping people if we let them get away with things that in any other space would create a case for them. So we take them seriously. I'm not saying we escalate it like it would in the real world, so to speak, but we take all threats seriously and say, hey, that's a real serious threat. You're threatening violence against me. That's not allowed in our program. And you follow through with the consequence, or you engage with them on that. You let them know that you're taking that seriously and engage with them on how serious that behavior is, and bring in team members. I'm going to get to these questions here because I want to hear more about this. Conversation movers. Some people move when they talk and moving towards you. Patricia, please talk more about that.
Some people, like when they talk, it's just a meandering tool. They just kind of meander in their space, but they're like moving. And just like I've had experience because I've worked with, justice involved individuals, and I taught at schools, and that meandering is sometimes hard to read. Like, so when they're meandering like side to side, or they're meandering towards you, like sometimes it's just a hard body language to read.
For sure. Yeah, I think fear is a huge thing too. I'm not saying you're afraid because you obviously understand the people you're working around. I'm saying that if one is afraid of what's going to happen, make sure that you're protecting yourself at all times. So that's where that supportive stance comes in. People are moving around. You figure out what distance is right for you, and you hold that. Okay, we're talking 6 feet. I'm not even going to go there right now, but I'm just going to talk about being in space with people, because you and I all know people are not abiding by 6 feet at all times. So someone's moving towards you. That's where your intuition comes in, but your supportive stance allows you to take that step back, take that step to the side. Because if you're thinking about having your feet at 45-degree angles, you can step over here and move. You can step forward and move. I mean, that's why a fight stance is what it is. It's so that you can have mobility with your footwork to move side to side, forward and back. That's what the supportive stance offers you. So I think 1, it's not projecting fear. 2, it's moving to your level of comfort. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is is not showing fear, and also using your intuition. Thoughts on that?
Typically I put a hand, like a low hand down, and I to kind of like almost like a stopper. Like I understand what you're saying, just so that they will like stop like progressing towards me. But yeah, I would probably call somebody over, but it's something that I've seen often, more often than not.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you're talking about putting the hand out. Everything is energy, you know? I mean, you're putting the hand out. You're saying like, "Hey, I hear you on that." That's nonverbal too. You're kind of saying keep your distance while you're also offering a supportive hand to say, "I hear you." That's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we get back to that tension reduction. Now we get back to delivering trauma-informed care. So again, this is that point two, that second section of the crisis escalation model, where crisis develops and how we manage it. And if we can get all the way through intimidation and they calm down and they end up not grabbing a chair to throw, they end up not balling a fist to strike, we can still do that tension reduction, that trauma-informed care, and that rapport building in that space. And hopefully not move on to physical intervention needs. Team intervention. And forgive all the words here. I'll probably read them, but some philosophies. Run to the door, walk through it. So when you're responding to escalation, I don't know what your spaces are set out as, but just envision being in another room, hearing a fight, whatever. Run to the door, walk through it. You know, I would always say at the trainings, like I'll run to the door and then I'll walk into the space and I'll just play stupid, like, "Oh, what's going on, guys?" You know, that way you're not immediately coming in there with just this amped up energy, like, "Let's go." You're moving into this space, soaking it all in, but you're getting there quickly and your radar is already pinged. So it conveys confidence, begins the process of setting people at ease. I guess there's some people on the phone. From this point, you can begin assessing the situation, determine who the players are, and if you are needed as a team leader or auxiliary team member. So now we're going to get into those team dynamics. Ideally, you're not in a situation alone. Staffing doesn't always allow that. So if you arrive first on the scene, you're a team leader, you know? Okay, I just say it isn't always the first, but it is when you arrive on the scene at the first time. Feel free to pass it off. So team leader is the first person on the scene, but it won't always be that at the end. They should be the most confident and competent. So whoever has the best rapport with the escalated individual. Team leaders conduct the crisis response, lead the de-escalation and crisis intervention, and dismiss unneeded support when able. So you rush to a scene, two people are fighting, none of them like you, and you know Donald's coming in the room. They're cool with Donald. You were the team leader until he got there. You're kind of saying you're giving whatever directions you need to do to break up the fight. You're not getting between them. Donald comes in the room, knows both of them. He's the team lead now because he's got the rapport. He's also the authority figure in the space as the manager or supervisor of the program. So now you step back and be an auxiliary team member. As an auxiliary team member, you support the team leader and ensure that the milieu environment remains safe. So this means clearing the scene of other participants, dangerous objects, and or supporting undetended posts. So this again was written for the day center and other congregate shelter spaces. But again, you know, this auxiliary team member is the person who, let's say the people really are tussling, or let's say that someone is having a cardiac arrest or an overdose. That auxiliary team member is not doing the chest compressions. They're calling 911. They're moving chairs. They're getting people out of the room. They're asking people to take some steps back. So auxiliary team member is equally important as that lead because they secure the scene. They may be responsible for tapping out escalated colleagues. So you run in there, Donald and someone else is responding to a situation, and you've got another team member, I don't know, yelling at someone saying, "I told you you weren't supposed to blah, 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 blah," whatever. You tap them on the shoulder and you say, "Hey, I think they need you over here. Hey, so-and-so's asking for you. Can you go over there?" Or, "Hey, I got this." You take over for that escalated colleague. You do it gently and without calling them out. You can address all those concerns later in private or bring them to your manager's attention. Biggest thing in my mind is knowing when to walk away. We are responsible for our own behavior. So if you're escalated, it's okay to step back. This is far better than most alternatives. If you need to walk away, tell a colleague, inform your supervisor, and take a 15-minute break. Communication is key. Lastly, do your best to recognize when you are not needed. Nothing is worse, at least in the spaces I've worked in, when you've got 5 people standing around looking stupid while 3 people are doing the work. Go attend to another post. Go check in on other participants who are possibly being traumatized by the scene at hand. Draw them away. So know when you're not needed in the crisis response and shift to engaging other folks or other needs of the program. So, if 2 or 3 have the event under control, walk away, see how you can assist. If the team leader asks you to stay, please do so. Crisis intervention and de-escalation is fluid and ever-changing. Your primary responsibility is to manage your own behavior and be aware of your surroundings. Stay calm, communicate clearly, and act as a team, even if this means walking away. So those are some of the biggest things that I would offer to a team. Actually, let me stop real quick. Are we talking about motel spaces right now, Alexandra? So what kind of events? I heard what some of you were saying about escalated folks coming from off of streets in the surrounding area, but participant on participant situations. Can I hear some of what you all are facing? Because I want to be able to craft this better for you for future trainings.
I'm Shannon. I'm the site manager at Central in the motel. I'm not sure exactly what everyone is referring to, but I know of some examples where we sometimes have guests who are placed in the same room together based on the agency that has referred them, and there will be some things that come up between the 2 guests just because of different personalities and how they're getting along. And so sometimes it can feel like staff are having to manage that a little bit or a lot. So that's one thing. Another thing is sometimes we have couples that are referred to us as well. And even like yesterday, we have a couple that or not yesterday, today, apologies. We have a couple that was having an argument, and then we have to separate the couple from and then determine what room they're gonna, like, are they going to another location? Are they, like, what does that look like? So those are some of the things that we're navigating. Is that helpful?
That's very helpful. Thank you. And I'll definitely put it out there. I'm not equipped to talk about DV or the nuances of that situation. So I think that that's something to flag. And I know, Alexandra, you have, and that was the intention for some of these sections, but that is not my area of expertise. So yeah. So these may be, I think the principles in here can still apply to what you're dealing with. But I definitely want things to be a little bit more key to the programs that we're speaking to. So let me just move on. So some closing tips. Behavior influences behavior. So how you show up at work and treat others directly influences how you are treated. Do your best to be aware of your own feelings and needs and how they affect your actions. This goes back to being centered within yourself. You are an ecosystem, your mind, body, spirit. And if you are not taking care of those quadrants prior to coming to work, you're going to be you're going to have dis-ease. And so you need to be in check with yourself, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Self-care, to many, and at times myself, has been Netflix and a drink or whatever, or a lot of food, then I feel like crap the next day. Whatever it is, that's not self-care. Self-care for me is getting some exercise, reading a good word, and getting rest. You know what I mean? So behavior influences behavior. Do your best to ensure that your behavior is appropriate. Do your best to make sure that being appropriate and centered within yourself is not work for you as well. We just want to show up our best selves. Keep in mind that the reality of precipitating factors. So I imagine you probably talked about this yesterday. You know, there's that classic iceberg analogy. There's the behavior above the surface, and then everything that happened underneath, whether it be childhood trauma, whether it be someone yelling at them on the street, you know, any of the traumas that you know our people are facing or that you face, precipitating factors. It is not about you. Participant behaviors and escalations have their origin far before you showed up. You are experiencing the effects of a lifetime or even a single day of trauma. It is not about you. So use this understanding to stay rationally detached. You may not be able to control precipitating factors, but you can control your own responses to escalation. So rational detachment, it's not being a sociopath. Rational detachment is understanding, like, this is their stuff, this is my stuff. Thanks, Alexandra. And staying rationally detached. And the way I compartmentalize this is my heart's open, but whatever pocket of my heart is my feelings of pride and self and insecurity, I'm detached from that. I am observing what's happening in front of me and responding in the moment as needed and to that person. I try to stay rationally detached. Do your best to always maintain an unconditional positive regard for those you serve. This will allow you to always pursue and maintain therapeutic rapport. De-escalation begins with relationship and empathy. It's all about the trauma-informed care and maintaining therapeutic rapport. You said it a lot before.
Chris,
So
real quick, can you speak to more
Yeah.
to like that last statement, like do your best to always maintain an unconditional positive regard for those you serve?
Yeah.
I mean, that's challenging, right? So
Easier written than done.
exactly. And so like, what are some strategies, or like, do you have anything that you would like to share? That's a tough one, because like, even, you know, especially when you can see somebody doing the same thing over and over again, and then it's very harmful. And when you want to offer the resources, or they deny the resources, or, you know, are unable to abide by the rules and regulations of the program, and then inherently get exposed to further trauma or removed or separated from the program. I mean, it's challenging. And so like, I'm just wondering, like, how do you remain positive about doing this great service for folks when it can be so daunting?
I would say that line is an ambition and a goal. And it's something that, you know, like we talk about, we're striving towards racial equity. Doesn't mean we're there. So I strive towards that. So that means whatever thoughts that I'm having or have had, because I don't do direct care service anymore as a job, I strive to do that. So anytime I feel my thoughts getting dark or resentful, I have to reorient myself to striving towards that ideal. The best I can say is stay rationally detached. It makes it so much easier. Doesn't mean your heart's shut off, but you're rationally detached from the things that will cut at your heart. It's something we strive to, and everyone is different, and everyone will be able to achieve that in the same way. And my last slide here, to get a little fluffy on this, but this is actually, I think, the best response to your question I could have is, we're the lighthouse for those that we serve. Participants are sailing the tormented seas of our streets, seeking safety. We have to be a beacon of hope. So even if they're crashing into the jagged rocks of trauma and are overcome by waves of shame, it's our duty to remain light in their memories. If you're struggling to shine, be gentle with yourself, let a friend know, make time to refuel your lamp, and come back brighter each new day. So that's my sappy way of saying, people may die in trauma that we're serving, but our hope should be that they remember us always as a light in their memory. Alexandra tried, I knew she gave me those resources. I should have done this. That's a dark thought that I'm putting out there, but we want to be light in people's memories. Best case scenario, our hope is that even when we don't know where they are anymore, there may be in another city receiving the same services. We're going to click in their memory. We're light in their memory, and they reflect fondly on what we offered them. We may never see the fruits of these labors. We may never know what happens to folks. I don't know what happened to thousands of the people I've seen over the last 10 years, but I sought to be light in their memory. So that would be my encouragement to you all.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? I don't want to. Oh, Shayla has their hand up. Shayla, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I really like the beacon of light because, you know, I made a lot of mistakes I was a part of the darkness, I guess, for a while, and then I got really high off of being the light and tried to bring the light to people. And I realized that just being the consistent sort of staying in one spot, I love the lighthouse thing because, you know, I never know where I'm meeting somebody on their journey. I never know what seeds I'm planting, what's going to stick, what's not. And so that's really, really helpful. And I think in order to be compassionate for people and, you know, keep the balance of like knowing there's the iceberg underneath without diagnosing them or acting like I know what's going on, just that consistency overall and the compassion for self, you know, it exudes and it reflects. So I just wanted to like shout out to you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it.
Copy. Guy, I see your hand up. All right, it is now down.
Yeah. I want to plug in this tool that I utilize as well. You know, when those times are rough and you're getting called all these names, and boy, I've been called a lot of them in a lot of different, you know, escalated states. I'm always keeping my forefront of my mind that this person is just trying to get their needs met, and they're using the tools that they've grown to use over these years of time and in their experiences and in their walk of life and their path. This is how they've got their needs met. And hopefully we can be that beacon of light to try to show them that there's other ways to go about it. So when, you know, to detach my feelings from the current situation, I always just try to keep that in my forefront. This is just a tool for them to get their needs met. It's not a personal attack on me. And I recite that in my head, that it's not an attack on me. They're just trying to get their needs met. And, you know, after we move through the situation, I might walk away and take me a deep breath and, all right, I feel better now. But take some of that self-care time for yourself in the middle of the space that you work in. But I always keep it in mind that, you know, we're working with a population that has been walked past, looked over, and looked around. And, you know, if you do the same, they're going to feel the same. So I just, like I said, it's a tool that I use is just be mindful that this person is just trying to get their needs met, and it's not a personal attack on you.
I'd like to say, like, I remember when I was out there, I used to say, I'm poor, and I don't like to use this term stupid, but I used to say that, like, I'm poor, I'm not stupid. I can see right through you. I know when you're going to be fake with me. I know when my social service worker is sending me somewhere I'm not supposed. I know how many times they're going to send me through the hoop. And so, like, just recognizing that like the folks that you're serving, they're the most resourceful people. You need those folks in your life, because when it goes down like COVID, trust me, they're surviving. You know what I'm saying? When all the houses and everything's stripped away, they're surviving. So let's just get that correct. And so really de-escalation and validating any time an individual is able to de-escalate every step of the way, validate that. That goes for staff and the guests. We're going to talk about aftermath, but like if you see somebody, they're escalating. I've done that with Donald before. Donald, I saw you during that meeting. You handled that great. That was years ago. Now I'm coming back. I haven't worked with Donald for 10 months, and you see him now, he's on it because he practiced. You know what I'm saying? Like, this doesn't happen overnight. One of the last things that I wanted to mention, and I didn't learn this until actually I went through the DV advocacy when I became the trainer. I recognized that I had failed in a lot of ways. My social service work, I forgot to ask folks for consent. In a lot of ways, we think about consent sexually, but I forgot to ask folks if I can have consent to offer them information. So I started this strategy, and I started to ask my folks that I was giving direct service to, Do I have your consent to share information with you? And it changed the whole dynamic. For the very first time, individuals had said, wait, I have choice, I have consent, I can say no, I can say yes. They had never been asked this question their entire lives. Have you ever been asked that question? Ask yourself, try it on your child, try it on your mom. Anytime you want to offer your vessel, the vessel, that's you, your vessel. Anytime you want to put your vessel in somebody else's space, you know what I'm saying? When they're going through it, ask permission. Do yourself a 100, ask permission, and that will let you know from there, as long as they're not hurting themselves, whether you are the right person to be there. And I'll stop and get on my soapbox, but I had to throw that out there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you and the work you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you so much, and we are ahead of the game. How about that? How about we take it's 2:17, and so let me see, let's round that off. How about we come back at 3:35? Would that be good? I mean, not 3:35, 2:35. Does that sound good? 2:35. We'll do a break for 15. Okay, cool. We're on track today, so we may be able to get out a little bit early, but 15 minutes, and then we'll come right back. Good. Are there any follow-ups? I'm not missing anybody, right? Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for being patient during that extended break that allowed me to get a couple things put together. I'm excited to start this next section. What would you do if? Real quick, so I appreciate that Chris was able to kind of touch base in regards to defensiveness and pushing back. Like, so if somebody is questioning, then we want to give an authentic answer. One of the other things, if they're refusing, then we want to set boundaries. If they're venting or if they're releasing, then we want to allow them to vent. And then if they're intimidating, then we want to call for teammates. And then we want to follow up with trauma-informed care. And I remember, it's been a while since I did direct service. Well, actually not that long, but those situations come up every single time. And to have concrete answers to address those situations or to meet those situations is great. So I really encourage y'all to start practicing that. With that being said, we're going to kind of switch to more of an emergency type of response. And I'm hoping that you all will enjoy this section. This section will be more participatory, and we'll be doing a lot of engagement, popcorn kernelling, a lot of involvement in regards to, like, let's shout out some answers, let's respond to each other, a lot of dialogue, let's share some resources, let's share some solutions. And then after my section, we're just going to roll right into Mia, and Mia is going to focus on what to do after the event. So we're going to kind of, the journey of today is, okay, we've learned about nonviolent crisis intervention. We know how to do that. We know what that is, right? But now we're going to talk about crisis response and protocols in the shelters. What do we do when somebody is actually non-responsive? What do we do when we actually see DV? What do we do when we need to call the police? How do we engage with the police officers the way we're supposed to engage and the way the Joint Office and our supervisors want us to engage? Does that make sense? Is that okay with folks? Okay, so we're going to start off with a video, which is kind of good. Well, actually, let's do the guidelines for the thing, but we are going to start off with a video. Is this thing going forward? Did it click forward for y'all? Y'all see the learning objectives on there? Okay, good. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to start off with a video, but then we're going to explore and share some community resources, because part of de-escalation is knowing about the community resources and how to access those resources. It's one thing to say, okay, I know this community resource, but do you know the way to actually, what the individual would actually have to do to actually access those services? Do we have community partners that we know? Do we know key tips and tricks about actually how to navigate these systems that we can either offer our guests or actually share amongst each other? Because sometimes that's all it takes, right? And then we are going to learn about that video is actually tackling mental health stigma. So I may have had those mixed up with the slides. But when we move to the what would you do If section, then we're going to really focus in on like mental health, substance use, domestic violence, self-harm, suicide, and any other of these emergency responses that come to mind where there may be like, oh, well, I'm not sure. Well, some folks do it this way. So Donald will be leading this like my left hand. I'm the right hand. He's my left hand right now during this whole thing. So anytime where there's like a discrepancy, because I don't know all of your rules and regulations, I'm not that familiar, I haven't been in a position, I haven't been on the ground, and there may be some uncertainty and things have changed so much. So this actually is an opportunity for us to get some clarity. We will not get all the answers. However, this will be an opportunity for us to learn some best practices and some emergency response protocols that we have as is. One of the things that we have to be flexible about in our journey is that we have to be flexible with the way that the things change, especially if we have a protocol right now and then it comes to our awareness that it is unsafe. That will change over time. Sometimes we'll make a decision or a change that will be effective, and sometimes we'll make a change that won't be effective. The whole process is to learn and walk through that process. At least you know what you're falling into, right? So like, I'm tired of falling. I don't want to fall back. I want to fall I want to see what I'm falling into. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to give you the tools, you know what I'm saying? So then at least you know, if you're going to fall into something, then you can catch yourself. And then understanding, okay, I already talked about that. I'm sorry. I will move forward. I just moved forward twice. Okay, so let's watch this video real quick. And I have my volume up and we'll see. And I apologize. I understand that I haven't been doing like videos that are homelessness based or unhoused focused or subpopulation specific. However, I feel like a lot of these tools that we're teaching you or trying to share with you are transferable across the board. And the more that you can use these tools and see other folks using these tools, then it can hopefully inspire you to see that there's a bigger picture, that folks are working all over towards these same issues and how they're interconnected in the social determinants of our health. And so I apologize that, the couple videos yesterday mentioned other, entities out there, but this is real world and we can apply these things. So take what you can and leave the rest. But I hope you all enjoy this video. And this is just kind of grounding us in, and like, when we want to do emergency response, mental health, everybody has mental health. That's bottom line. Everybody's got mental health. All right. Now, and I'll just leave it at that and I'll watch the video. It's so funny. Can you hear?
This is home for me, man. And a lot of memories, a lot of friends, a lot of family. And it's just a blessing to be back here to see Columbus grow in such a way.
Well, if you like seeing classic rare cars, drinking a cup of Joe, and supporting a good cause, well, you're in luck. The Cars and Coffee Rally in support of mental health awareness is making its way to Columbus. It's hosted by Cleveland Browns offensive tackle, Chris Hubbard. He joins us now to tell us all about it.
I was so excited to hear about Chris Hubbard coming to town because, people know who he is. He's kind of like a hometown hero. He went to Carver High School. And the fact that he's brave enough to talk about such a taboo subject as mental illness, that's even greater. I think a lot more ears that listen. It's like, wow, you came from here and you're struggling with a mental illness, but you're successful and you're thriving, so I can do well. And students and the community in general, they tend to listen to stuff like that.
Just seeing the high school the way it is now, it's emotional because you've seen how much it has grown. It's way better than what we had at all. Way better. No, man, we have none of this. None of it. We were told that if you're going through something, you might want to push through it. Nothing's wrong with you. Be a man. And we never realize it until we get to this deep point in life to where we're like, man, something is going on wrong with me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Do y'all want to continue to watch it? I'm sorry. Do you want me to play it again? I'm so sorry. That was my fault. Here, I'll try to fast forward it a little bit. There we go. I'm sorry. I do want to give a trigger warning though.
Every day you come to work, man, you got to deal with these hostile environments, going through different stages in life. You might be dealing with depression or anxiety, but I had to get some help.
It really touched his heart to be able to go back and have that opportunity to kind of let these young men know, hey, listen, I'm just like you. I saw how it's important to him to break down that stigma, especially in the African American community, especially African American males, on how we're just supposed to hold everything up and just suck it up. That's that old school mentality where it actually builds up inside and it creates a lot of stress, which then in turns into depression.
Take care of yourself. Talk to somebody if you're going through it, or counsel anything, because like you might not know you're going through it, but at that time I was like, man, I'm a dude, man, I'm a man, like I can deal with myself. But at the same time, I was losing weight. I was 305. I lost weight in like a month, for like 2 I went down to like 275. So I had to get all my weight back from dealing with stress and anxiety and going through the different roles and depression and stuff like that.
You can see on a daily basis the issues that we have to deal with in regards to mental health, and for him to take on that issue, I mean, it's a great deal to us.
Seeing the young students here today at Carver Columbus High School, I saw myself sitting in one of those seats, and just to be able to talk among those guys brought me back a lot of memories of how I was in school and how I dealt with a lot of things going on.
We hear about bullying, we hear about peer pressure, we hear about problems with people being bullied because of their sexuality.
Just seeing my friend go through that, it was pretty tough. He liked other men, so that's kind of why they picked on him, because of what he went through. But he dealt with a lot of things at home as well too. It's not just as far as bullying at school, but he dealt with everything at home. Like I used to talk to him and try to figure out what's going on, but you know, he was just so sheltered into the fact that, you know, he wasn't gonna let that come out. He was always holding something behind and just keeping it to himself. And then next thing you know, that suicide happened. So
in my experience talking to African American youth, it's just overcoming that stigma. Whereas, you know, maybe their parents may not necessarily believe or understand what mental illness is. They kind of get it and they want to get help, but they don't really know who to talk to about getting help and where to go to get help.
Open my eyes to a lot of it. Now I understand it's not, like I said, somebody's crazy.
Oh,
you
no.
know, that's the first thing.
No,
Oh, she's
no.
mental.
Yeah.
That's what you think.
Right.
That's what my thought process was a long time ago. But when he started, it's like, oh, it just brought more awareness to me. Really did. It helped me to understand more.
And so where will the proceeds go?
the proceeds will go to NAMI. Everything that we're raising will go straight to them, and we just want to see it happen and raise as much as possible.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, the Cars and Coffee Rally. We hope everybody will come out and support mental health.
I'm glad to be here. Man, this is what it's all about.
We were out there 6:30 in the morning. The NAMI crew came through. We set up the table. Everybody started popping their hoods, getting the music going. Chris was in heaven.
Oh yeah, man. Jersey. Got the jersey.
We had a great day in regards to fundraising and people supporting the event.
Appreciate what you're doing. Yes, sir. I'm glad you brought the lives out here. You know, we're just trying to bring that awareness for mental health and just have a good time as well.
It takes a brave man to really, especially a football player, an NFL player, to come out and kind of admit to having mental illness issues, and most importantly, finding help for it. And there's a lot of them out there that have these issues. And I'm very proud of Chris being brave enough to really shed light on it, but then also tell his personal story about that.
Come on, look at the camera. Look. Anyone that's dealing with mental health today, just know your voice is always meant to be heard. You're not alone in this world. There's a million people that's going through the same thing you may be going through. And there's many ways and different things that you can do in your life that can help you get out of that depression, that hole that you may be in. Just know that we are here to help you, and NAMI is going to continue to help as much as possible.
All right. What do y'all think about that video? Any thoughts? I know it was related to a football player's experience. However, what are your thoughts?
It's I like to see that because just talking about mental health in general, and I'll just speak from personal experience and just knowing that in the African American community, it's taboo to talk about your stuff. You know, it really is. And I have, you know, a cousin that, you know, unfortunately passed away due to his mental illness, and just his lack of resources because it was like so long ago compared to what we have now. I'm just glad that there's more change and where people can talk about it, because when it gets left out and when you're not supposed to talk about it, it's just really hard.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
so
acknowledging is really important.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you for sharing your experience. Any others feeling inspired to share their thoughts about this video or mental health at this point in time? The stigma that folks experience. Well, one thing's for sure, you all have a resource as of now, NAMI, N-A-M-I. It's the National Alliance on Mental Health. So that is a great resource. You can literally click it in your Google and it gives you some quick tips and some guidance, some self-care, all that type of stuff. So thank you for allowing us to watch that video. I think it's very inspiring to recognize when folks can recognize that they are struggling and then they seek help and then they also share and help with others. And for some of us, that is, thank you, Mia. For some of us, that is our own journey. So I always like to see when other folks are doing similar work to me. With that being said, one of the things I bring up the mental health video first, and it'll all make sense in a second. Richard, I see your hand is raised. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm in the middle of root canal surgery, but this was so important as a subject. I wanted to at least kind of come in for a couple of minutes. But yeah, this is a very important issue from personal experience. I know at the shelter, having started a county-approved program specifically for Black men who dealing with trauma, we have to keep in mind that in our setting there at the shelter with Black men, we already have folks who have gone through trauma just as being Black here in Portland, Oregon, also being homeless. And then when you put the added factor of dealing with COVID, it's pretty considerable. And there's a lot of reticence on the part from a cultural standpoint for us to acknowledge that we have mental health issues. So this is a very important issue relative to equity and how we look at people of color, especially Black folks, Black men there in that setting. So I'm very happy to hear that this is a component of the discussion. So I thought that was great. I just got the tail end of the video. However, this is very emblematic of what happens in our educational system, what happens here societally in terms of society. So I'm very kudos to you for including that. So I just wanted to make sure I commented on that because we learned so much, or I learned so much with the program we had there at Mount Scott, and providing a safe space for people of color to talk about their issues can be very beneficial. So that was my comment.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I admit I was having a difficult time hearing you, but acknowledging that mental health exists is one of the first steps of de-escalation, and being mindful of our own mental health, but then being mindful of some of the other systems that have prevented folks from being able to take care of their own health. That is ultimately like one of the key things that you can do as a social service provider, recognizing the systems that are built, that are constructed to prevent individuals, specifically people of color, from accessing healthcare. And we don't really want to spend too much time on that right now because this is not the racial justice moment, but thank you so much for validating that experience. Yes, Jordana, you bring us into our next slide, which is community resources. So like this is one of the times where it's always, I love this portion because then this is where we get to like start sharing like what's worked, what's not worked. And I understand that general staff, like maybe you're not at the wellness, or wellness is, I know that everybody has their own specific job duties. However, if you are a very resourceful person and you know the resources in your community and you know how to access them, then you are more in tune to not only survive yourself, because I have the 211 number app on my phone and I check it at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. to see what I can access myself. I do that as a regular thing, and I will always do that because social service work has become my lifestyle. So it is a tip that I do. Now, I would like us to try to figure out, I mean, feel free to raise your hand, put in the chat, and I'll try to track that. But what are some resources? I mean, y'all can see the slide. These are some resources. Either have you accessed these resources or have you experienced access? I mean, what's your experience and does this work for our population? Have you used any of these resources as a de-escalation tip? And I may not be able to see everybody, but I'll try to track. Jordana?
Yeah, I have pretty good familiarity with the crisis line, the Multnomah County crisis line there. It's an interesting setup because that line does triage. So you sort of call and state the situation, and then they'll send you where they think that's appropriate. Sometimes that's 911, sometimes that's Cascadia Behavioral Health's Project Respond. I've used their services multiple times, and I think there's a lot to be said about that, especially because they have like a mixed reputation because sometimes they bring police, depending on the situation. I'm also happy to talk to people about that way more in depth because I have a lot of experience with it. I think that knowing more about like how those systems work and how to get like an outcome that y'all are looking for specifically is really helpful. So for me, I know that like if I'm calling and someone is only a harm to themselves, I feel really good about calling the Multnomah County Crisis Line and Project Respond because I sort of know how their system works. But I also, you know, there's situations in which like bringing police in is like obviously not ideal. So I think that, you know, more community ed on like what happens when you call and what the resources are going to be when you call is just like an important piece of all this. And I know that this conversation won't go in depth there, but I do think that's like a need for folks who work in shelters because we see a lot of mental health issues, and I want us all to feel really resourced. But generally, I've had really positive experiences.
Thank you, Jordana. Anyone else have a similar experience, or how are folks accessing, you know, 211, the community resource list? I know that I put a couple of resources in the binders that I've left at shelters, so please check those out.
There's this phone app that I heard about called Strapped, and actually one of the guests last year showed me this app, and you know, it's really empowering because it's at the palm of your hand and it's really plugged in. Like it's called Strapped, like without an E, so STRAPPD, and you can go on there and kind of like look at different kinds of resources like shelter, healthcare, blah, 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 whatever. And then it will plug like your location, almost like a Google Maps, and just show you a ton of stuff. So I love that too. And anyone can download that if they have a phone or access to internet.
Thank you, Shayla. I know, I love how they have like the in red writing that says like what the requirements are for you to access the services. So like you can keep scrolling, like 18, okay, don't qualify. Okay, youth, okay, bam, you can just scroll through it, because back in the day it wasn't like that. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, you know what I'm saying, they didn't let you know. But then that also allows us to say, okay, if the person needs an ID, then okay, where's your ID? Do you have an ID? You know what I'm saying? Maybe we can make a copy for you. You know what I'm saying? Do you have your food stamps? What are kind of what Jordana was saying, you know, one part is knowing the resources, but then what does the individual need to actually access those resources? Do they need their ID? Do they need their food stamp card? Do they need income verification? What do they have right now? Or what do they need to get? Do they need transportation? What resources do they have? What are some other thoughts that come to mind? I know we're resourceful.
I just want to drop this on there too. You know, when we are reaching out trying to be helpful and access resources or give somebody resources, be mindful that they might have accessed resources as well. So, you know, it's always nice to just ask them, what have they already experienced? What have you tried? You know, sometimes when we get in our helping mode, we're just help. And we don't need to take that time to step back and ask what they've already done. So you're not just going over the exact same stuff over and over again. That also can cause conflict. If you tell them to go to TPI and they've already been to TPI 3 times, but you didn't know that because you didn't ask, and all you want to do is help. So, you know, and then now they're mad at you because you don't know nothing. I've already been there, you know. So just be mindful when you're helping to ask, step back a little bit and let them help themselves help you be more helpful, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Donald, you do bring up a good point. So you even took it another step further. So like right now, I'm just really focusing on you knowing what's in the community. I'm not really focusing, and I'm not suggesting on anybody like really going out and doing intentional like case management or anything else. I'm saying that if you know what's in the community, whether you give it to somebody or you give it to one of your shelter coworkers, then that's at least you being more resourceful. And then Donald, you did bring up a good point. Asking the folks that are experiencing it is the best and first step, because they are experts in their own lives. And you can do a lot of harm, and we're trying to be trauma informed, and we're not trying to re-traumatize somebody. So the last thing we want to do is send them down to the resource that they've accessed 1,000 times and get turned away. Especially when we know that resource, even if it is a mainstream resource, may not cater to those populations. We have to be familiar about these things. Who is the population that we're serving? Do they consist of a dominant gender? Do they consist of a dominant individuals with dominant, you know, access needs? Then okay, let's cater that, and let's focus on getting the resources, that making sure that our staff are familiar with the resources, that not only that we can offer our guests, and the ones that we can offer for ourselves to get the support that we need as professionals and the tools that we need as professionals. Any other thoughts in regards to resources? How have folks, I mean, has it been harder, more difficult because of COVID-19? Has anybody recognized any changes from pre-COVID, post-COVID? Or not post, it's not post yet, but Donna, what'd you say, BCAC? Trish, less mental health. Okay, wait, hold on, Trish, I'm sorry. Jordana mentioned less mental health folks willing to come on site. Good point, Jordana. Trish, I see you unmuted, go ahead.
I feel like it's the language and the ability to access isn't as easy. I feel like it talks above people's heads because we assume that there's one level of education and it's like, you know, high comprehension. And so if you look at something and it doesn't make sense to you, and it is a deterrent from you getting to that service. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't even matter how accessible it is, because we're thinking about like the more functioning person. We have to remember there's other people that aren't functioning. And so when I looked at stuff, I'm like, that language is so confusing. Mm-hmm. Like they're gonna get frustrated before they take the time to understand what it means. They're just gonna give up. And so then they lose access because of the frustration of just the communication and how it's put out there. I feel like things just need to be communicated better so people can really understand, oh, I do qualify for that. Oh, this is what that means, you know, for me in my situation. Because when you read it initially, it looks like, oh, that's for somebody else, not for me.
That's awesome. Language is key. And breaking down those language barriers and like, you know, I sent out that one survey, like adult learning, like folks learn differently and they metabolize the information differently. And some of our folks can't read. Some of our folks, English is not the first language. Some folks need glasses. And if only they had glasses, they would be able to read the words, right? And so like, hey, maybe somebody needs some glasses and then they'll be able to see what's in front of them. And that changes the whole perspective of what's going on. However, because of all the trauma, because of the system, because of who knows what, there's barriers in the way for that individual even knowing that maybe they don't even have their eyesight. For all they know, their eyesight has been deteriorating and they think that they got 50, 20/20 eyesight. You know, but then finally you put some glasses, and not the glasses that you keep in a shelter drawer where everybody leaves their glasses. Don't grab one of those glasses. Let's try to work with folks to figure out, you know, the resources that they have or what they have accessed in the past or where their last case manager was, you know what I'm saying? What worked with them? Who did they have a good relationship with? And then just try to like work out from there. I'm going to move on to the next slide because I want to validate time. Please be in tune with your community resources. I am a major resource like hub, and I love to share resources related to not only our guests, but related to our workers and their sustainability and any access needs in regards to you being able to get the education and the information that you need to achieve what you want to do professionally. Like that's what that's my passion. And I'll move forward. Just reach out if you want to check that out. Okay, so now we're going to kind of get real in tune with what's going on and talk specifically about these different subgroups and populations. So mental health. Okay, so mental health is defined by the World Health Organization is a state of being in which the individual realizes his or her abilities can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Examples of like mental health or poor mental health would be anxiety, bipolar, depression, some eating disorders, and substance abuse. And I guess this is a good time for me to also say a verbal trigger warning. Please take care of yourselves because we're going to be talking about some intense materials right now. And we're going to be using some very graphic language, but there is a point to this. It's a point for y'all to have a space for us to start building off and learning together and making it the way we want to make it. So with that being said, mental health and substance use disorders are also something that some of our folks may be experiencing. So there's mental health, but then there can be the combination of mental health and substance abuse. Again, our job is not to diagnose folks. Our job is not to judge folks. Our job is not to come up to our own conclusions. Our job is to be present. Our job is to make sure that everybody's safe and to reduce the harm and to provide trauma-informed care. That is simply our job. But with that being said, we're gonna dig deep, and I'm gonna be relying on Donald because I do not know the protocols. But I do want us to be able to have open dialogue about, you know, mental health and what does this look like when an individual is experiencing or is escalated, and maybe they may be experiencing mental health, or maybe they told you I have this, because I've experienced that too. Folks be like, I have this, I need my medicine. You know what I'm saying? I haven't got my medicine right now. That's why I'm tripping. You know, especially when it's time for agency separations to occur. You know what I'm saying? So what are your thoughts in regards to mental health, and what are the different crises or protocols or immediate responsibilities that y'all have practiced or that you want clarity on? Donald will provide the clarity, and then I will kind of like just be here. But this is our moment for us to talk about this stuff. What comes to mind? So if somebody is yelling and they're highly escalated and they're saying that I haven't got my medicine for a while and they're damaging property, They're in the middle, Mount Scott. They're right next to the desk, and they're yelling and they're screaming, I haven't got my medicine, and they're banging on the table. What is your response? What's the very first thing?
I think you just listen. Like reflective listening, you want them to know that you hear what they're saying, at least.
Okay, listening.
Yeah, de-escalation. I usually have had that happen at that same location, and I would say like, it depends on the person, but I would usually be like, wow, that's a problem. I hear you. Let's go take a walk really quick. Like, we got a beautiful park outside, and then usually, bring someone with and be like, I'm going to bring this person too, but let's get some air really quick so we can figure out a good solution for this. And you get if they're, being actively kind of disruptive or lashing out or destroying property. First, we got to take care of that. Then we can, let them know I hear them so that they can do that and then take care of the issue.
Thank you.
Yes, and I usually do the same thing as well. I usually take them out, get them around from the surrounding. And I try not to make promises on trying to get their meds, but usually, as Shayla said, that's usually what we usually do is just kind of pull them off to the side and de-escalate the situation with them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so then let's take it a step further. Say they calm down, they come back, but they damage some property. Then what are y'all talking about? What are y'all doing? What are you feeling? What's going on? Right? What's going through folks' minds?
Come on, there's some shift leads on this call. So these are situations that might transpire on your shift. So there's 30-some people on this call. Somebody has to have an answer.
I could step up and things are going down even more because Mount Scott is closing, but I'm going to step back so that other people can step up.
Well, we can sit here in silence.
Hey, Hector over here.
Hi, Hector.
Yeah, so I'm not sure with the whole damaging of property. I'm pretty sure that we have to go over it, but maybe we should try to address it like the following day. That way things don't escalate further in the same night. Would that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So picking a time and a time and place to make the ultimate decision in regards to the behaviors, right? So
yeah, just kind of like letting that individual know that there are going to be some consequences. Possibly not today. You have had a rough day today, but however, tomorrow we can go over things.
that sounds great. Definitely. I hear like acknowledging the person's feelings, recognizing that, hey, there's some boundaries that have been violated. Now's maybe not the time because you're tired, probably sleepy, probably hungry. Let's take a nap. And then let's review tomorrow. Why does something have to happen right now? Yeah. It doesn't have to happen right now unless we make it happen right now. We can step back, we can take pause. It's all right, we can figure it out. And maybe we might be able to connect them with the wellness, and then we might be able to give them the medicine. So if they are separated, at least they got a trip to the medicine before they're out there in the cold. I mean, and I that's real, and that's the de-escalation that at least we can do. That's part of it. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be a big blow up, but that's one example. Does anybody, Hector, did you want to add anything to that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hold it hostage.
Oh, well, I was going to also say that whenever that kind of situation in particular happens, it's kind of like really like in the afternoon. And I'm not really one to kick people out into the night, especially when it's cold. But I'm not shiftly, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually one of the protocols that we have, unless it's like a direct threat of safety. We wait until, the next day. And I usually give them a heads up, like exactly like you said, Hector, we're going to have to talk. We're going to have words and stuff, but
cool. Glad you talked well.
It'll be fine. And then the next day, And so it's good because all of the site managers and the program leads are on that same page. So that's exactly, yeah, options.
So we have one strategy that we've identified with mental health, recognizing the trauma that can exist with mental health, recognizing that mental health is something that everybody has, that, you know, that can be something that we can take into consideration when people's behaviors get escalated. And our response can be different. But this is one of the ways that we can respond depending on the situation. Donald, I'll let you cap off this section and would you like to add anything specifically in regards to mental health protocols in our COVID-19 response, do's and don'ts? Specifically, don't do this, do this.
Well, I think there has some other people that wanted to respond. I think there were some hands up.
I'm sorry, I can't see folks. I see Jordana's hand up again. Can folks call on people? I should be using this app.
Sorry, I just forgot to put it down.
Oh, okay. Is anyone else's hand raised that I'm not seeing?
No.
Okay, cool. Donald, do's and don'ts?
Well, I think Shayla and Hector did a good job. Hector, I think that's the name. I think they had a good job explaining it. My key thing would be always try to remain, keep everyone safe, staff as well as guests. So if, you know, taking that walk and, you know, de-escalating the situation that way, it helps. But throwing stuff and being violent, we have to think about the masses. You know, there's more people in there. Yes, this person is having a mental health thing, but we want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure the staff is safe. We want to make sure all the rest of the guests are safe. So moving them into another room, I think that's a great idea. And, you know, asking them, how did you get your medicine before? You know, trying to give them a space to talk and kind of talk you through what's going on. You know, like Chris talked in the last section, the iceberg effect. You're walking up, you see the thrashing out, but there's so much under the waterline that this person is experiencing or facing that we don't get to see. So being mindful of that when addressing the situation and just trying to see how did they normally get their medicine. And if we can help you utilize that resource that you utilized before, you know, using them to be their best judgment and what their needs are. I mean, we can assume, we can come to the table and help, you know, try to help everything out. But it might be as simple as, I just need to call a friend of mine. They have the pills in their car, or they have my medicine in their car. And we're thinking like, how do we get to the hospital? How do we get to the pharmacy? It may not be that. So, you know, stepping back and allowing them to have the space to explain what's going on is really key. But I definitely like the idea of moving them out to space to try to remain people safe. Also reach out to your team. Mascot and other spaces, they usually have behavior continuums, and you can check into those and kind of find out what steps need to be taken behind the behavior. You know, give them a second to relax and calm down. And people are usually a little bit more level-headed once they've been able to have time and cool off a little bit and tag someone else in. Maybe you're the person that's elevating them. You're not trying to, but you're the person that they're elevated with. Tap into your team and let your team come check in with them. And hopefully that might help calm them down or de-escalate the situation as well. So those are just a couple ideas.
Thank you. Asking them how they have survived without their medicine before is key. How have you survived without your medicine before? And that kind of speaks to like, okay, what Donald was kind of talking about. I'm going to jump to substance use. So substance use disorders occur when the recurrent use of alcohol and or drugs cause clinically significant impairment, including health problems, disability, and failure to meet major responsibilities. As I mentioned before, both the mental health and substance use disorders are referred to as co-occurring disorders. This is important for us to know in general. Obviously, there's specialists that work to prevent and treat mental and substance use disorders and provide support. Our mission is to reduce the impact that our service delivery may inherently, you know, may have on folks that may be experiencing mental health and substance use disorders. So what crisis intervention strategies or what have been our emergency responses to folks that may be non-responsive and or may be experiencing intoxication. Yeah, what's that experience been like in our low barrier settings? Or even in our motels? Like, I would imagine it would be kind of scary if I was imagining. I mean, I would be kind of fearful for folks behind closed doors, even though it's COVID-19 and they're supposed to be isolating themselves. Addiction is a disease, and so then therefore, if somebody is addicted and has the disease of addiction, then by all means they're going to get what they need to get to meet that need. So how are we actually responding to the best that we can based on closed doors, you know what I'm saying? Or even in Mount Scott, everybody's right there in the middle of the night. I'm pretty sure they got the hubs in the middle of the night. I don't know, they used to have the hubs. Remember Donald and Willamette, they used to have the hubs behind the cameras, and they would all be doing their dealing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, this is real. Like, how do we respond to this and keep people safe? We just can't have people dealing drugs on our property, especially when there's a bad dose going around, especially when COVID's going around and people have chronic conditions. However, this is our reality. What do we do with what we have?
So we had a question in the chat, and it says, what is our official policy at the VMOs for guests and substance use? So the policy is we're a low barrier and we perform harm reduction. No, we don't want to promote people utilizing drugs, but we also want them to be safe if they're doing. At all the VMOs, we have clean needles, we have other little things around that as well. We don't promote it, but if they are going to do it, we do harm reduction, and we want them to be safe and healthy as possible. We do wellness checks throughout the day. The first one in the morning is mandatory. We have to do that check to make sure that you are okay and your well-being, and making sure you're alive. I mean, you have been in that room for over 16 hours unattended, so that mandatory first wellness check, that's like a layer or a protocol for us to be able to make sure that the person is alive and well. They are in their own personal space when they are in the motels, and we try to respect that as much as possible, but we still have to make sure that everybody is safe in our space. Narcan, utilizing Narcan, we try to take Narcan with us when we're doing wellness checks. If you're, one thing about Narcan is, even if the person is an overdose, you can't harm them with giving them Narcan. So, if you use it and they're like, oh, I don't really need it, it won't harm them. But you always still want to, talk. Someone could be really under the influence and not quite overdosing, but they're just really high or really intoxicated. So, use your words. Hey, are you all right? You might have to say it a few times. You might have to, raise your voice a little bit. I got a deep voice, so I'm like, hey, I'll yell it one time just to get their attention and let them know that I'm coming around or whatever. I think Jordana said something else. Oh yeah. Also too, that's another thing too. Being mindful of the it says needing increased access to fentanyl test strips, Narcan training. Yeah. Also too, if the person is experiencing overdose with including fentanyl, one shot of Narcan is not going to work, and that is one of the scariest things. You have to wait a full 3 minutes before you can administer the next shot, and that 3 minutes sometimes feels like a lifetime. And if you do it before the 3 minutes, it's not even useful. You just wasted your second shot, and that could have possibly caused that person life. So that can get scary at times as well. But when those tough situations, reach out to your team first and foremost. If you think somebody is unresponsive, you want to get another teammate to be there with you. If they are unresponsive, take control of the situation as far as like CPR training. Yes, this is COVID, so we don't give them mouth-to-mouth. Compressions and sternum rubs could be taking place. You also want your teammate to go get help. Call 911. AED machine, that's why you want to come in pairs. These are tough situations, and we definitely want to be mindful when this is going on to try to remember as much as you can of how the event happened, how the incident happened. So when you get to the end, you can report it and we can move forward and be mindful of the things that happen. So I don't know if that was helpful I think it was Haley that answered the question.
Yeah, that was great, Donald. I really appreciate it. I meant to mention, which is a good time for me to mention. So I am working on getting organized to get the train the trainer Narcan training organized for our shelter leadership, so we are trained. I am also getting organized our CPR and first aid trainings for us, so then we can get all of y'all, and I know some of y'all are already on board, but I'm getting that all prepared, and I hope to package that up and offer that to y'all, because I know that that is just as important as this. I'm trying to streamline that all together along with this de-escalation training. I hope that that answers a little bit of questions. Yeah, I already know that that's on the forecast. So with that being said, with substance use, are there any other thank you so much, Donald, for explaining the specifics. Are there any other thoughts in regards to or questions in regards to emergency responses and substance use?
Yeah, I forgot one more piece, and I apologize. So also too, if you see someone, a resource for you guys, there's a resource. I don't have the direct address, but there's a resource for people that have opiate addictions that they can use in a safe space, so they don't have to use alone. So if they are using, that's a harm reduction tactic that unfortunately we can't stop you from using, but let's try to be safe as we possibly can. And there's a group where there's like a safe use space where you don't use alone, and that way if you are starting to overdose, there's people in the space that can help you with Narcan and things like that. That's also a resource that's out there. Just want to plug that in as well. Maybe I could look it up and put it in the chat as well.
Oh, that's what's up. Definitely. So knowing the resources, if folks know resources that we can actually, get information for ourselves to do our own educational guided learning, or that we can offer our folks, for them to take with them, then that'd be great. But these are the conversations that y'all should be having with each other on a regular basis. Not just when an incident happens. How are we going to handle this situation depending on the season, depending on what's happened politically, depending on what just popped off last night? These things will change. There's not just one way to actually create a response. There's different types of ways to come to a solution. Harm reduction is principle, and as long as you're putting that in the forefront, then most likely you're doing the best. Let me move to the next one. Domestic and physical violence. So there, domestic and physical violence, and then there's also sexual assault, and there's also sex trafficking, and there's a whole realm of violence that our folks experience directly related to sex, and then directly related to not sex. We have to be familiar with the differences. And of course, I wanted to tell you something, but that's okay. I hope to be bringing some opportunities for us to talk about domestic violence, sexual assault, and intersectionality. However, I can't put a date on that. And in the meantime, how are we going to support the folks that are actually experiencing DV and may not be ready to leave their partner yet? And what do we do with that when we see either the residuals of the violence, like for example, say partners go into the room and they're in there, we don't hear anything all night, but we know that the next day that we see the lady, she has a black eye, or he has a black eye, because the violence happens both ways. And that's another thing that I had to get real with as a social service provider, serving folks that are unhoused. Because violence is a protective factor, and it's actually the way people protect themselves. And so what are your thoughts in regards to domestic violence? How have you all responded? What do you want to know on how to respond?
Hey, Heather again. So in the shelter space, we had a couple situations where it was getting kind of like violent, but it wasn't violent in the sense of physical. It was more like mentally abusive. So we offer up space, like different. They were in a couple of sections together, so we offer up, separating them between the male and the female section. And I think that really works. Sometimes just giving people like the option that there's space that can be taken, even in the same location or in the same setting.
Yeah, that's great. Relationships, it is healthy for relationships. In relationships, it's healthy for you to separate. Like that's all about healthy relationships. And so like providing guests the opportunity to separate for the night, take maybe one partner can take a night out. Like that is a de-escalation solution, and it's great when we can catch that and offer that opportunity when we start to see the behaviors occur. Because it usually, I mean, in my experience, it usually escalates over the day. You can see it happen. Something happened in the morning, somebody woke up something, or coffee something spilled. You can see them arguing throughout the day. You see it. They're at each other, and then it's like, not wanting to, insert yourself into a situation, but how do we support folks in their relationships? Central, I see you. Would you like to speak?
Hey everyone. So we actually have a good example of what we've been dealing with today. It's very common here at the VMOS to have couple arguments because we get a few couples that are sent to our VMOS. So I guess our incident today was, a couple they were fighting. We heard noises and screams from the room, and the hard part here is that we don't see what happened. We are behind, like they are behind those doors in their rooms, so we don't get to see any of that, right? So what Danita and I we approach it, we took the person that was more escalated and talked to that in a separate space, and then talk about concerns about safety and all that, and then the other person actually left because he was really upset. So we got to, isolate both people. So we got to put one person in one room and the other person in another room. And there was a whole argument also because we got also pets involved, children sometimes, but, we had a dog involved. So, I think there's a lot of things that go into it. But, just staying calm, I think helps a lot. And, if my safety and wellness, Anita, she always is there to support me in any way I can. And I feel like that's something that we should remind ourselves, that we have a team, that we're not alone, that if we need to tap out, we can tap out. And I feel like, honestly, I don't think they were like very escalated. I feel like we found a solution as a team. But I think one of the main things that we keep reminding ourselves is that we are a team, that we should remain calm, and that I feel like those two things helped me today to deal with the situation.
Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. I love that teamwork. Like that's the only way. I mean that's the main way that you're going to succeed. Like you don't have to like everybody, but I tend to find some strength in every single person a weakness in myself, that a strength that somebody else has, that is a weakness in me, and then I latch onto that, and then that's my connection with that other individual. So when crisis goes down and I know I'm weak, I know exactly, okay, Central, I know I'm calling on you because I know Danita has that strength. You know what I'm saying? So like that's the least that you can do, is recognize the strengths that are around you and then work in teams. And then evolve. One caveat I would like to say in teams is that it is okay for a team to come together and then for one member of that team to decide this is not for me anymore. And that is okay for that person to step back without judgment. We should be able to opt into and opt out of some of the things that we're doing, even on a regular basis, without judgment and without us holding resentments towards each other. We have no idea, just like that iceberg, what that individual has going on. We are in the middle of a pandemic and we are swimming. Half of us are swimming and we're making it, and then we're surviving and we're helping other people. So please give each other grace. One of the things that I wanted to touch base on in regards to the domestic violence is being mindful, obviously, of harm reduction. It makes it extremely difficult when you can't see everything, but then it's also probably better because with all that trauma, you just become filtered with it. With that being said, separate folks, work in teams, and a useful resource that I did not know of when I was doing social service work is when folks do decide to get help, here in Oregon, one of the most useful tools for DVSA victims and survivors, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of age, is the safety and security assessment. And so safety and stabilization assessment. And for the victims and for folks that are experiencing domestic violence, for them to have a safety and stabilization assessment, that is a key for them to have access to all DV resources. So one of the things that I try to ask my folks that want to open up to me and share that they are experiencing this is I will ask, have you ever had a safety and stabilization assessment done before? If they have that, then they have a key to accessing resources that are not on the mainstream front line. And so those are the type of things that are useful for you to know, are useful for you to tell your guests. So then when the time comes for them to either take a new one or get there to that point, then they know why folks are asking them for these things and they see the benefits of them. I just want to throw that out there. And Mia, I'm going to read Mia's comment. Let go of our expectations of the outcome, as it can be extra alienating for a survivor who choose to return to a DV relationship situation if the staff member is attached to a certain outcome for them. Yes, exactly. So it's not our decision for that individual to leave that space. It's just, how can we reduce the harm? And if that's, would you like 4 Tylenol before you go into the room? Then that's, will get you 4 Tylenol before we go in the room. Central, what were you gonna say?
I actually have a quick question, because I think, you know, you were saying, you know, like, respect their decision if they want to go back to their partner. But I think, like, recently, based on, like, the experience that we have had in the VMOs, when we have separated couples and they obviously want to go back together, they get into arguments again. And it has happened more often, you know, that they get into arguments than if that they get back together. So I think, and then Donald can correct if this is wrong, but I feel like now the protocol is, you know, letting them know that if they want to split, like if they want to move to a different room or a different site, that's going to be the final decision for this program. But after they finish their isolation here, they can reunite. You know, that's not something that we're forcing on them, and they also can meet offsite. However, based on our experience, I think that was a little modified, but Donald can maybe can explain more about it.
That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that example. Donald, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, you know, in domestic violence situations, we don't want to be the decider of how they feel in that situation, but we want to try to make a safe space for everyone in that space. And it's a little difficult with the, you know, COVID protocols and, you know, public health. And we have a lot of other variables when we're dealing with exiting somebody from the VMOs. So we have to make sure that we're really mindful on that. But we do want to provide a safe space for either one of them. So, you know, the steps would be to move one to another hotel and don't tell the other person where that location is, and give them opportunity to feel well and isolate and get back to 100%, and then they can move forward and they can join their relationship or whatever. We're not there to be relationship counselors. We just want people to feel better and be in a safe space while they're trying to feel better. But yeah, just trying to be mindful of how they feel, and if they want to go back or forth or any of that stuff, it's not for us to judge. We just want to remind everyone, keep everyone in a safe space, and as well as staff and all the other guests.
Mm-hmm. Safety planning is key. Nobody's asking you to do the safety planning, but what can make you safe for this moment in time? What can make you safe until tomorrow morning? I'll be back. What can make you safe? Who can I hand off? Who is somebody on the next shift that you feel comfortable with? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's all you can do. You know what I'm saying? Do you feel comfortable with somebody coming to check in with you later? You know what I'm saying? When is the next time that you will feel comfortable with me reaching out to you? Like, those are some of the things that's all we can control. You know what I'm saying? That's all we can control. We don't have to put on our white cape and go save the day. Central, I see you again. And then Shayla, I see you too as well. I'm coming.
Hey, sorry. We just wanted to clarify, because we are going through the situation right now. So, because we are having that situation right now. So if they and this is for Donald and like also Brittany, maybe like if they do want to, get back together in the same room, like, are you saying no, right? Yeah. That okay. We just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call you after this. I'll call you after this.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, setting those healthy expectations, because I can just see it. If you let them go back together, then they might send the homies over and be like, oh yeah, it's all good. They let you get back together. Don't worry, I mean, it just happens like that. I would have come too if I would have been back in the day. I would have been like, it's all good. We can argue and we can get a room. I mean, let's go. Shayla, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I like what you said about being like, what can we do right now to make sure that you're safe? Because then we're not, impeding anything on them really. We're also bringing ourselves and the guests back to this moment, which is not to be corny, but the most important moment of all. And then just saying like, hey, let's focus right now. We don't want the future trip, but like my job is to make sure that you're safe for the day. How can we get you through one more day so you could wake up tomorrow? And we can do it all again, but I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Also, keep in mind the crisis lines and culturally specific crisis lines. So one of the things that we didn't touch base on is there's mainstream, culturally responsive programs, and then there's culturally specific programs. There's a difference between the two. Culturally specific programs cater to specific populations of color. So if an individual is a person of color, don't assume just because they look like a person of color or they look a certain way, don't assume. I would check in with them and I would ask them, what resources are you interested in culturally responsive? So that would be dominant, like TPI, Central City Concern, agencies that dominantly serve Caucasians. Those are culturally, that's usually a key sign. That's not, that's usually what it is. Culturally specific organizations serve a specific population. So just keep that in mind when you're talking about the resources and where you want to refer folks to. I'm going to jump to the next slide and we're just going to keep rolling. Feel free to tap out, but I doubt if we're going to have another break because I just want to make sure we get this information. The next one is self-harm and suicidal ideation. And I'll just throw in self-medication. It could be included in this self-harm section. So what I wanted to, I'll start with self-medication and self-harm just because, and then I'll escalate to like warning signs of suicide. Just to throw out there, folks, it's a survival factor for folks to medicate, especially when we're experiencing homelessness. And so let's just get real. And so self-medication is a human behavior in which an individual uses substances to influence, their physical or psychological ailments. And there's like a wide variety of self-medication, but you shouldn't put judgments on self-medicating. And just be mindful as social service providers, like that is a coping skill that social service providers have experienced and that have shared, that they have also inherently started to, practice doing this work. So be mindful of these things, not just with our guests, but with yourself as we're experiencing this, because it is very daunting work. But with that being said, and then another thing about it is that self-medication is not just illegal, illicit substances. It could be food, it could be money, it could be, there's ways that we can self-medicate ourselves in unhealthy ways. And that in turn will adversely affect ourselves and others. So suicidal ideation, what is suicide? So warning signs of suicide, you want to look for signs. You want to empathize and listen. So like if you want to, if somebody is physically like saying, I want to harm myself, I'm going to a bridge, you know what I'm saying? Or, they have some scissors or they're actually hitting themselves or hurting themselves, you know what I'm saying? Look for those signs, you know what I'm saying? You want to empathize and listen. You want to say like, hey, I recognize that you're harming yourself. Is everything okay? Can I help? Is there anything that I can do for you? In what ways can we make this a safer space? If you see anything around, then of course, you know what I'm saying, you want to try to get it away in a subtle manner. But like a lot of the times, individuals just want you to sit there and listen to them and let it out, and explain what they're feeling right now. And Mia, feel free to jump in at any point in time, or anybody else, Donald. It's been suggested that you should ask folks directly, like, are you contemplating suicide? And that is one strategy. And then again, remove the dangers. Examples also, I mentioned, like, examples include obviously talking about wanting to die, looking for a way to like hurt themselves, like they're actively telling you, I want to find something. Do you have, somebody's come to me and be like, hey, do you have some scissors before? Like, I don't know. They're talking about like the burden that they are on other people. They're withdrawing or feeling isolated. Somebody was really outgoing and then all of a sudden they're really isolated. That's like that's something that we can look for in each other. They're sleeping too much or they're not sleeping at all. So obviously suicide is a serious public health problem that can have long-lasting harmful effects on individuals, families, and communities. And there are many factors that can contribute to suicide. And the goal of suicide is prevention, is to reduce the factors that can increase risk and increase factors to promote resiliency. So ideally, prevention occurs at like multiple levels, like individual, within relationships, and the community and society. Prevention also doesn't have to be as complicated. It just takes effort. And so if you're concerned about someone, just ask them straight out. Don't leave them alone. Remove all the firearms, alcohol, drugs, sharp objects that could be used in a suicide attempt, and take the person to the emergency room or seek help. So ask them, make sure they're safe, and seek help. Like, that's what needs to happen and inform the leadership. Does anybody, Central, I see your hand raised, but does anybody else want to add something to that? Am I missing something? I'm doing this on my brain that's been out of whack for a second, but like, that's what I would do. Like, hey, are you okay? Anybody want to answer something? I mean, not answer, but add something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so if they're actively hurting themselves with scissors, what do we do? And they don't respond to our, verbal, questions or comments, or like we're trying to, like, what do we do? They're harming themselves. Do we call, EMS because they're gonna hurt themselves seriously, or we can't put our hands on them trying to get the scissors away from them? Like, what do you do?
Great question. What do you do, y'all? What do you do? I see some answers in the chat. Shayla says 911. Jordana says call 911. Do y'all agree? Is this an emergency response to 911? Somebody's actively, physically cutting themselves. Don't interject, right? And then what do we do? As teams, right? Or individually, what are we enacting?
I'll jump in. I would definitely, if I felt like I could in that moment, alert other staff to what's going on, and try to create like a privacy situation if there wasn't already, so that like other folks at the shelter aren't witnessing that kind of thing. Obviously, like talking to that person, seeing if there is a way to like work the relationship and rapport, so like have them hand the scissors over. Like just connecting on the human level to try to like mitigate and de-escalate the situation. Definitely asking for another staff member to bring like a first aid kit over, and trying to think what else. Yeah, like getting support from other staff, talking to the person, trying to de-escalate. And if they get to the point where they like have regrets, like walking them through, and this is like more first aid, but walking them through how they can take care of their own bleed. There's another piece there. I mean, obviously following up with like incident report, and having someone meet 911. I imagine everyone has protocols for that at their sites. But yeah, just trying to de-escalate and get the support. Those are the main two.
Thank you, Jordana. Definitely. So it depends on the situation, but we definitely want to do multiple different things. We want to get help. We want to get professional help. We want to stop the bleeding, like get first aid to the individual, at least if we're passing it to them. Like there's multiple things that need to go on, and every site has a different protocol. We're trying to remain keep folks safe, but you want to call, Larissa, you want to call for assistance. If somebody's if you see violence harming themselves or harming somebody else, ask for assistance. It's not your job. That's not what you're getting paid for. You are not getting paid to go and prevent somebody from harming themselves. That's not your job. Your job is to keep the shelter safe and to provide a service to folks that can behave by the guiding principles of the shelter. Central, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to chime in? Maybe not. Anything else to add to self-harm? Okay, cool. So there are multiple emergency protocols that y'all should be aware of. And this being aware of all these different protocols within your shelter is something that I hope that we can all be working on, because it will be different. In case somebody states that they have a coworker comes to work and they leave work that day and they say, I got COVID. Like there's an emergency response that needs to happen. Get familiar with that. I don't know what it is, but get familiar with it. If you don't have it, make sure you have it within your teams. CPR, Narcan, AED, like those are the things that I'm going to get specific trainings for y'all. But in the meantime, like what do you do if this happens? Who is the person on each shift, or who is the person within the sites that has that level of expertise, that feels comfortable at least performing it on the job or at least following up with you? Please identify these things. Fire. What do y'all do in case of a fire? I hope y'all know what y'all do. I hope you know where to direct the guests, and I hope that that's being like at least talked about on a regular basis. What do you do in case of physical violence? Just friendly reminders on what you do in case of physical violence is very, very important. And we can't just say no, right? Because that's not, we want to just say like, okay, remove yourself, keep folks safe, try to keep yourself safe. Do not ever enact in physical violence. There have been 3 individuals that have died in my shelter, and I have held like memorials for each 3 of them. People will pass away in your spaces. I don't know if they're gonna, if you continue to do social work, let me reframe that. If you do social work on an ongoing basis, there will be people that you will be your clients or your guests, or that you will know, and they will pass away from natural or from things like suicide, or from violence, or from just natural passing away. That happens, and so we be prepared for that. That could be a potential, and that's the reality. People live and people die. Gun violence could also happen. A mass shooting. What do we do? Do our guests know what to do if this was ever to happen? And it's not to, don't assume that just because there's a gun or a mass shooter that would be one of the guests. Do not assume that you're doing this emergency protocol because it's got to be one of the guests that's going to come in here mad at me, because like history has shown that mass shootings don't actually occur like that. So like, but you still want to know what you need to do. You know what I'm saying? And if there's not a protocol put in place, then you should come to work, you should explore the environment, and you should run through it in your brain. And you should say, if this goes down, then these are the things that I'm going to take care of, me, myself, and I, on top of following the rules and regulations within this spectrum and within this circumference. Property damage and theft. That can go multiple different ways. That can go, you parked your car outside and the window got busted. It could be your purse was left in the locker room and something happened with that. That could be somebody damaging the property, or ripping down something that belonged to the facility. Like those things happen. What do you do? Who do you call? How do you call? What, like what pictures do you need to take? What tools that you have to where you know what to do, and how can you guys work? How can y'all work together to where you're actually thinking about these things before they happen? Because when you think about it before you happen and you practice it, then y'all are very much more in tune to be like, okay, we just practiced this about 2 weeks ago. That's way different than we ain't ever practiced this at all, or I have the paperwork somewhere and it's in the sheet over there in the folders. Earthquake, what do we do when the earthquake occurs? Do we have everybody's information at our shelters and their like geographical area of where they live? If we lost teleconference, if we lost our communications, you know what I'm saying? Like, we would want to know where our folks are, at least the location of where they're at. If there was a major earthquake, we would want to know where our staff and where geographically they are at, or where their safe number is, or some certain things about them. Those are the things that you need to know about each other that are going to help you survive some of the worst case emergency responses ever, and at least have each other's back for, you know what I'm saying, to build culture. Severe weather is also another one. This pops off every year. Like, this could be considered emergency response, especially when there's the overflow, when folks are coming in and people been up all night and there's just conflict everywhere and nobody's been sleep. Like, these are the things that happen, and like, we're talking about these things year round, not just when severe weather happens, or not just when the people tell us that we're going to have the earthquake. Like, we will be more in tune to be and more capable of continuing the job and sustainable. Does anybody have any other emergency responses that I have forgot to add up here? Okay, cool. I'm just gonna go through incident reports real quick, and then we'll just hop into Mia, and then we'll see where we're at from there. And I can also just record and then just put it all together, and y'all can watch the last section on your own time. With that being said, there's benefits of incident reporting. I'm not really sure your protocols in regards to incident reporting, but this is an accountability factor, and incident reporting has been established to promote and improve like safety on the work site. And so most employees don't comply with this protocol. I'm not judging. I have no idea. This is in my experience, my previous experience, and that's including me not knowing to fill out an incident report, or not even knowing that where the incident report was located. So here's an emergency response. Can we get a break? You're so funny. Yes, Donald, I will give you a break. One of the funniest things about it is okay, does everyone know where their incidents report, or like, does everyone know their protocol of incident reports? Okay. So y'all got that down? Okay. There's no questions in regards to that. Because if y'all got it, I mean, it's number one, it's to provide an immediate reinforcement of the action. What happened? You know what I'm saying? So one of the things that I do in my teams at Willamette Center is we would decide it between our shifts. Okay, who's going to be the point person during our shift breaks? How are y'all doing? I feel good. If something pops off, I want to be the point person. I feel good. If something pops off, I want to be 911. I feel good. Okay, I can grab the incident sheet, you know what I'm saying? And I could be ready at the front desk. I can be the one logging it, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are the things that, you know what I'm saying, we could be doing. And so we share the responsibility, and we're all working together so we can get off of work on time. So immediate reinforcement of action. You want to write down what actually happened. And then the second part is, you know, it removes the hazards and threats and communication awareness. So that's what you want to, it uplifts all the hazards and threats that could happen. And it's a good way to communicate and bring awareness to that. And then number three, it is a good way for us to continuously improve the process. If there are things wrong with the process, if incidents continue to happen, incident reporting is a great way for us to track these things. It's a great way for leadership to know what's actually going on. It's a great way for you to enhance your skills in regards to how you report and how you actually use the language to describe what you're actually witnessing and what you did to solve a solution. So use incident reports if that's part of your job and role responsibility. But even if it's not part of it, then figure out how to document what you need to document to get it out on paper, so at least that you have your own documentation of the wonderful work that you did and you processed through. And I'll stop it at that. What are folks feeling? We only have an hour left. I can definitely give us a 10-minute break and we can wrap up with Mia, because I'm pretty sure Mia will get through their section in the last, and then I could potentially spend time. I can record the last section, which is on safe sustainability and safety on the job, and we can share that with you all. How does that sound? Okay.
Sounds
cool.
good.
All right, good, because I can't see all y'all. I'm on this little screen. There's like 30 people. I can see 3 people. Okay, so how about this? 10-minute break. Is that good? 10-minute break, and then we'll come back.
See you in 10.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you, Guy. I appreciate the communication. Thank you, Mia. I'm sorry I wrote over. I got you, though, okay? Set your time. Take as much time as you want. And Central, I'm sorry if I missed you. Did I miss you with your hand raised?
Oh.
Okay, cool. Hey, it's 4:05. We're winding down. Last 55 more minutes left, which is great, of a 2-day training. Awesome. Real quick, Mia, I wanted to see, Donald, are you available? Okay, maybe he's not. Okay, cool. So Mia is going to lead us on a section, what to do after an event. And then Mia, I will let you take it away, and you just let me know when you want me to click through, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you,
Hi,
Mia.
everybody. This is a pretty short section, so we'll go through it together, but please contribute the things that work well on your shifts. A little tiny bit of background about me. I think for folks that were there yesterday, I was working with the physical distancing shelters in, I think it was March to July. I don't know, Brittany, you could correct me if I'm right or wrong about that. But I was working as one of the program leads. And before that, my background's in youth sheltering. So I was doing program management and case management for kids that were 12 to 17 in emergency sheltering. So it's a little bit different. That being said, I love getting everybody's feedback and opinion in these sections. Super helpful for me, and hopefully kind of brings all of our knowledge together. Sweet, we can go on to the first slide. So we have, when we're talking about what to do after an event, the core component that we'll be talking about today is debriefing. After each incident that occurs, after these major scenarios that we all deal with as staff, we want to make sure that we can debrief together and have a chance to reflect on what happened. Some of the things that we'd want to talk about during these debriefs include what made the conversation and/or the situation difficult, what was your goal going into the conversation or the situation, looking back, what would you have done differently, and looking back, what would you do again? Good for the next slide. So again, these debrief discussions should occur after every situation that escalates. In these programs and working in a sheltered environment, there's so many things that happen. Obviously, the pace is really, really fast. We may not always have the perfect opportunity to do this, but we want to try to carve out that time as much as we can while still making sure our program is safe, while still making sure people are in the stations that they need to be in and guests have access to what they need. And they should also be inclusive of all of the staff involved. So we want to include wellness, safety and wellness staff, shift leads, general staff, people who are really intimately involved in that incident. And sometimes we won't be able to do that given the constraints of what's going on. And in that circumstance, it's really important that the shift lead or the person who's in that leadership position during that particular shift can follow up with whoever wasn't able to attend and let them know what was talked about, get their feedback from the situation. Good for the next one. So a little bit of information about the debriefing protocol that does exist already. Again, it should include all the staff involved in the incident as much as possible. And it should include space for emotional debriefing and factual debriefing. Some of the questions that we may want to ask ourselves in these debriefing moments would be, what actions were taken? What made the situation difficult? What could have been done differently? What was done well? What is the emotional impact of that incident? We also want to make a plan for further action as needed. Like we've talked about with our emergency protocols, we want to make sure when we're processing through a situation and things get wrapped up, deciding who writes the incident report, if any follow-up needs to happen, And we want to assign roles as to who will complete what. I know at least on my end, it can be easy to be like, okay, cool, we made that plan, let's go do our thing. Oh wait, we didn't actually choose who would do what. We just know what things need to happen. Especially when we have those jitters and that like adrenaline that happens after a really tough situation. So just keeping those things in mind. And definitely, because documentation can be so important, which is probably something we all probably share that awareness of, like, oh, an incident happened. We want to make sure we record this information as carefully as possible. Having that conversation too during our debriefs about who wants to be the person who adds things to the log, who does the incident report, who follows up with a manager if necessary, just so we're all on the same page. Good for the next one. So lastly, the difference between emotional and factual debriefing. These are two equally important types of debriefing that we can do after these events. And the first one would be emotional debriefing. And like full honesty, this is something that's like really hard for me to do, especially when you're working and you're in the zone. It's really hard for me to talk about like how I'm emotionally impacted by something, especially because you kind of compartmentalize those incidences, right? When we're dealing with so many things at once. But one of the things that's pretty cool if we have the opportunity and the capacity to do a little bit of emotional debriefing with our team afterward is it can really decrease our secondary trauma. This type of debriefing involves communicating how the incident affects you to your team. And it's an important tool that can help us combat that burnout and that secondary trauma. Because secondary trauma can be triggered by experiencing and helping clients navigate these scary, sometimes violent, sometimes really traumatic incidents. And we're humans and we hold that in our bodies and we hold that in our memories. So if we can have an opportunity as a team to receive feedback from each other and share that impact, share a little bit about how we're all feeling, that collective kind of community that we can build in those small moments, I feel like can go a really long way. It also makes it a lot easier for us to leave our work at the door. I don't know if there's anybody here who sometimes comes home and just has those racing thoughts where you're replaying the situation or you're ruminating on like, oh, what could I have done? Or I can't believe it happened this way or whatever it is. Having a little bit of space where we as a team can share those moments and that shared experience may help us kind of reduce some of that stress that we carry out as we leave. And then the second type is the factual debriefing. So just helping articulate what actually factually occurred during our shift in order for our operations to run smoothly. So this involves sharing with oncoming shifts specific things or concerns that did not get done or addressed during your shift, what intakes came in, who is exited, information about reports that need to be filed, how the meals are going, stocking of supplies, notable situations, concerns, and also sharing those positive moments. I think that's a really cool thing that we can also bring to our staffing culture, to the staffing culture in your programs. We want to share like those factual things that happen so that we can all be on the same page and we can all respond as we need to. But also if we can be like, oh, we just saw like the coolest moment of generosity between two guests. It was awesome. Or like, there was a giant spill in the dining room and so helped us clean it up and it was super appreciated. Whatever it is, to just try to foster that sense of like, yeah, this like we had a really hard time, but there's also some really cool stuff that happens. At least it helps us uplift some of the hardship that happens in our shifts. So that's pretty much all that I have for debriefing. I'm wondering if anybody else on the call has any feedback about what's worked, what hasn't worked, or what you would like to see in those situations. Or even, is this type of debriefing something that feels helpful for you on your shift or attainable?
For us at the Jupiter, I really like that there's like a half-hour overlap between day, swing, and grave shift. So not only is it a great way to like chit chat and get to know my other coworkers that I don't get to work with during my whole shift, it's also time for us to pass along information about, if we had any incidents or anything like uplifting that we want to share or whatever. That way we're just kind of cohesive as a team in how we're serving the guests and looking out for each other.
Great. Thank you all.
In the chat, I put acknowledging staff members and seeing if anybody had questions or concerns that are outside of like the people that we're serving, but just within ourselves. So I think it's important to check in with each other as well.
That makes so much sense. I'm glad you added that. Thank you.
Yeah, and Marcus added making sure staff has a plan for self-care. And then Shayla mentioned, yes, that is good to do with other staff. Good point, Jordana. Checks and balances. And Jordana had mentioned previously, do we have people on the call or is everybody just on the thing? I'll find Jordana's message. So debriefing is really, really important. Oh, Jordana writes, I commonly review the written report with most or all parties involved. Wow, Jordana, that's trauma-informed care, right? That's upper level. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you mean the supervisor is going to come down and sit down with all of us, and then we're all going to talk about this executively? Okay, now that's de-escalation. That makes me so happy. As you can see, I'm blushing. My cheeks hurt. That's good stuff. But we could create that on our own. You know what I'm saying? Let's work with our managers. Let's work with leadership to figure out what works within your teams. If that is something that works for your teams, then let's advocate and figure out how we can make that happen for you. Especially if it's going to prevent further escalations, especially it's going to keep you here and sustainable and able to, receive and be willing to change and adapt and evolve, because that's what you have to do. You have to be able to be willing to evolve and meet folks where you're at and be able to shift, or be a chameleon, like Chris was saying. You have to be able to do all these different magical things. And that's what's exciting about it. You know what I'm saying? Or at least that's what excites me, to be able to sharpen those skills. So thank you, Mia. I really appreciate you. Does anybody have any final thoughts for Mia?
Yeah, I rose my hand. Thank you so much, Mia. I was able to call you a few times when you were the lead, and it was really helpful. And I just put in the chat too, being the person as the person who writes the reports, there's a lot of power involved in that, and being accurate and being non-biased is really important, because the guests don't get to, usually they don't get to write what happened. And then Jordana mentioned asking other staff what had happened. And a lot of times I'm not going to be around firsthand. I might get there on the scene a few minutes later or whatever, but having everyone involved can also be a part of that debriefing too. Hey, what exactly happened? Because I really want to be accurate, and involving everybody in that can be really helpful. But I just wanted to emphasize the power dynamic in being the person who documents. And then thank you, Jordana, for also mentioning how to avoid being unfair.
That's real though. So being mindful, where you're at before you even hit the paper that's going to impact somebody else's life. These notes stay with folks, and there are folks that have access to these, and based on the notes that we write, that is the way that they're gonna treat that person. And if you're writing judging language, like the person was aggressive or the person was this and that, then the person that's reading that is going to digest it, and who knows, maybe they're skilled and maybe they're able to compartmentalize and be able to say, this is loaded language. On the other hand, it could be somebody that it doesn't have that skill set, and it could be very harmful. So I like to not write, if I'm not going to write it about myself, even if it's a bad behavior, if I'm not going to write those same words, if I wouldn't want those same words written about me, then I'm not going to write it about somebody else. And feel free to ask for your own case notes, and you'll see that there are specialized people that will write this loaded language about you in your own case notes. So just imagine, you know what I'm saying? And if this has happened to somebody chronically over years and years and years and years, I mean, no wonder they're not accessing services. No wonder they've had such a hard time engaging with folks because of the treatment. And case management and debriefing is part of de-escalation. It depends. What are you doing after? Just like Chris said, that TIC after. How are we following up with the guests? How are we following up with each other? I'll get off my high horse because I see Danita over there. Let's go.
Okay, I just wanted to say debriefing can be magical too, because a lot of things are happening in the moment. And then when you debrief, it may be something that you didn't put in the case notes that you might not be aware is very essential to have there for future reference or anything like that. Then you also have people that may be on your team that's coming in that doesn't have the experience that you have. And it reminds you that nothing is too big or too small. Nothing is too much to say or not to. And that is a teachable moment for the both of you. Just because it's something that you're used to doesn't mean that they are, or vice versa. So you can always learn from each other. And so that's why I'm really glad that you have this segment on debriefing, because it's very important. That's it.
Thank you. Debriefing is part of the process, and it is a process. That's the thing, though. So don't think it's just a debrief and everybody's gonna go home, everybody's gonna be cool, and that we're gonna come back to next shift and everything's gonna be peaches and cream. You're going to have residual effects from that incident, especially if there's 3 incidents in one night. You know what I'm saying? You're going to feel that. So this is my suggestion. Recognize and validate that feeling. You are alive. You are supposed to be feeling those feelings. That means you are here. You are present. Welcome that. Now, what you do with those feelings and how you manage and cope those feelings is a whole different ballgame. But recognize that you're alive and you're well and you have power, and it hurts, but it feels good too. So recognize that as a social service worker. Recognize the power that you have. Ultimately, I feel like the direct line staff have the most influence and are the most powerful next to the people that are actually struggling. You know what I'm saying? So like, hold that power. Please use debriefing. Find out different ways to debrief. Find out maybe there's a debrief after a debrief, a regroup, and then a debrief. That's what you're supposed to do. That's part of the process. It's an ongoing journey, that cultural humility. This is a lifelong journey, especially when social service becomes a lifestyle. And I thought about that shower thought last night. That's that inspiration. I was like, dang, social service work has become a lifestyle for me. I mean, because I want everybody around me to succeed and get and get their needs met. I'm gonna jump forward, but it seems like we're going to end on time. Safety on the job. So real quick, and this is not an in-depth episode on safety on the job, but I do want to talk about some specific things. We will be, the learning objectives are discover Multnomah County resources, not all of them, but some key ones that would be useful for you, and learn about professionalism and ethics and social service work. And then we're going to explore sustainability, safety, and wellness. It will not be too in-depth. There is a really cool 20-minute video on trauma stewardship by the author of Trauma Stewardship that I think that I would be great if we could end on. I think that that would really, you know, be a positive effect. However, we shall see. Let me just go. Okay, so Multnomah County Safety, Trust, and Belonging. These are the individuals that are the HR, are involved in central HR. Well, most of them. These are the important folks, leadership. Anna Plum, obviously human resources manager. Karen Tani, HR business partner for non-departmental services. Jenny O'Mara. So Jenny O'Mara is no longer in this position. However, this is somebody that we've become familiar with, so I left this person's name here. When the new HR individual comes on board, then we will make sure that y'all know, and I will change the slide and be you know what I'm saying, communicating that out. with that being said, Jenny O'Meara is very familiar with her. She's been supporting us, and she will, even though she's transitioned positions, she'll probably still be continuing to support us, and she has a wealth of knowledge. So Jenny is that position right there will be your support, the HR business partner for the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Scotty Sherrington, for those, and I recognize that not everybody is union represented. However, for those that are union represented, Scotty Sherrington is your local 88 chief steward. Katie Evans and Rhea Graves are your stewards. Bam. So like that is a resource for you. You know who your direct line stewards are in-house, and you also know who to contact at AFSCME. The County Internal Protected Class Complaint Investigation Unit. So Multnomah County has a workforce equity strategic plan, and this is a process that kind of came out of that workforce equity strategic plan. You can find information about the county's Internal Protected Class Complaint Investigation Unit on Commons, and you can talk to your supervisor. And I encourage you to talk to your supervisor before you file that complaint. However, it's not necessary. You are free to do whatever you want to. You can also reach out to Anna, Karen, Jenny, me, anybody in regards to some of these concerns. And Lines for Life, this may not be the best placeholder. However, Multnomah County does have the Lines for Life. It's a new BIPOC crisis line that's answered by BIPOC workers that do the job for us to get the support that individuals that identify as being people of color can get, or as a person of color can get. So those are just some of the resources. One of the things that I will say is on Mondays when I do send out my weekly updates, and I do send resources with y'all. So I know that y'all are, you know what I'm saying, y'all are busy in your crisis. So what I will do is I will try to streamline the most resourceful resources that have come through the emails and provide that to you. And what I do is I also update the STL, which is the Shelter Team Leadership. So that's Donald, Katie, Brittany, I update them on everything that I'm doing with you, that I'm sending to you before I send it to you. So everybody's on the same page. Everybody's getting the same information. And sometimes I give them the additional guiding tips to keep it going. You know what I'm saying? So like, this is what we're doing. And these are the supports that you have internally. It's not perfect. It's going to work, and there's going to be some things that change. However, this is what we have, and it's all about doing what you can do with what you have. Any questions about this slide? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go through some professional and ethical guidelines for staff. I mean, ethics is how we behave when we decide we belong. I mean, that's my motto. And ethics is how we can part of ethics and professionalism is being respectful of others' desire for privacy. So we kind of talked about that, but confidentiality is key. And that goes for, within the boundaries and the scope of your position, right? So follow your job description and what those confidentialities, those rules and regulations are. However, it is important that, we are being mindful of each other's privacy and the guest privacy. We don't have to be going around gossiping and telling each other's business or saying, oh yeah, just because a guest told me about their life and gave me a great chapter of it doesn't mean that I get to go off and tell everybody's business. You know what I'm saying? Be mindful about the information you receive and be mindful about what information you share with others. Not everybody needs to know your business. It's better if everybody doesn't know your business. Pick and choose what business that you do share, and to be respectful of the business that others share to you. And you'll be in a better place. Be assertive, but don't be intrusive about your engagement and outreach. You're a social service worker, and I mentioned it before. We don't put your white cape on and think that you're gonna go save the day. I learned that from Dewana. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna end up doing harm. That's not your job. Your job is not to go save the day. It could help support others, get along in their day, but your job is to take care of yourself, do what you need to do, and come to work and be professional and ethical, and not to intrude and not to force anything on anybody. We are providing a service And that's what we're doing. But we're not forcing folks to engage with our services. We're not forcing them to behave a certain way. We're just guiding them and supporting them to behave in a certain way based on the needs of the establishment. I mentioned like maintain confidentiality in your relationships, and I kind of rolled that up with the respectful to the desire of privacy. But again, you know what I'm saying, there's certain things that should remain confidential, and there's certain things that you know are you can share more broadly. And it's hard. It's difficult, especially when it's a traumatic experience or it's a really escalating experience, to kind of shut that noise off in your head. You want to get it out, but there's got to be safe spaces that you get it out. And it's not always your coworker. You got to find places outside of your workplace to actually be able to process these things, in addition to the debrief that you have on the job and the meetings that you have on the job and the trainings that you have on the job. You got to find your specialized care, somebody else outside of your circumference, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a group, whether it's an activity that you do. And I know that we were sharing about physical activity, nutrition, and everything. You need somebody that you can talk to, that you can like be able to express these feelings with. So please just keep that in mind. Keep your word and be trustworthy and reliable. You know, I mean, like one of the things, yeah, keep your word. I think one of the things is one of the things that just came up is, I understand that folks have bad days, but you can't have a bad day every day. You can't not be willing to do that task every day. You can't willing every day. It's part of your job. Then we need to figure something else out. So be honest, be willing, be trustworthy about what your capabilities are. You know what I'm saying? I can understand, okay, I don't want to do it every day, but like there's got to be some time when you're willing to do it, and be truthful about it, or at least give us answers of why you aren't willing to do it. But be very trustworthy and try to at least be honest about your reasoning behind what you want to do, not just because I don't feel like doing it. Be respectful to the individuals that you work with. You know, never exploit your clients, never exploit your guests, never exploit your staff members for personal gain or for agency gain. And this happens. And if you see it happens, then you should alert somebody. You should inform a trusted individual. But in order for you to trust somebody, most likely hopefully they trust you too. So like, this is why we're trying to, like, all these are kind of connected, but you want to tell somebody. You don't ever want to sit on the sideline, and we didn't talk about this in emergency protocol, but you don't want to ever sit on the sideline and witness one of our staff members exploit another guest or other staff member. Also, do not withhold information from guests about their resources and services from which they can benefit from. So we don't have the right to do this either. Even in an escalated and highly intense situation, we can't refuse to give an individual a resource that they can benefit from. We have to refrain from doing that. If an individual can benefit from that resource, it's not our judgment call to refrain that from them. We should just give it to them and see what they do with it. And that's what our job is, to provide a resource if they're willing to take it. And maybe we're not the person to give it to us, or maybe it's in the wrong fashion. You're giving it to a paper, maybe they need it to be read to them, or maybe they need it in a larger print, or maybe they need Braille. Like, there's got to be a reasoning behind. There's usually something more, there's usually something deeper to why folks are not receiving the information, to just the basic, oh, they don't want to take the piece of paper, or they're being resistant. So let me see, I will go first. So sustainability, I mean, it's necessary to develop awareness of the cause, experience, and patterns and politics of homelessness. So this is something that, in order for us to do the job, and we do work for the Joint Office of Homeless Services, Multnomah County, but then we are looped under the umbrella. And so, that's a pretty powerful entity. We're one of the most powerful decision makers, and we're so far ahead of the game in regards to homeless services. The shelter services is only a fraction of what the Joint Office does. It is a minor fraction of like what the Joint Office does, but we work for this entity. And so, like, that being said, like, it is kind of our duty to know what's going on politically with homelessness and unhoused populations. So to notice the cause and the experience and the patterns, like that is going to make you a more informed worker, because if you're recognizing the patterns, then you're going to already prepare for it. So like right now it's summertime in my mind, then I'm already going to know it's summer, it's popping. There's going to be certain cultures experience summertime differently. And so then therefore, how can I, boot up my self-esteem or get my own skills sharpened enough for what I can assume is going to happen during the summer. The sun comes out, drug use goes on rampage, people are going to be out, maybe COVID's going to break. You know what I'm saying? What can I do right now for me to support myself and the coworkers? Okay, y'all, you know what I'm saying? Let's just do friendly reminders that people need to be, separated. Or let's make sure that folks have their clean needle sites. Let's make sure folks are ramped up with like some recovery things. Like these are the things that we can do on a regular basis that will help us, sustain. So be aware of what's happening politically in the environment, and don't read all the hype or believe all the hype. Continue to increase your knowledge on homelessness related health conditions and care also is a really good thing, and social service needs and resources. So remain have a perspective of objectivity with the guests. You know what I'm saying? Avoid, again, being judgmental, and that can be kind of hard. And don't intervene in areas that you're not competent intervening. If you're not competent to intervene, then do not do it. Just don't do it. Call somebody. There's so many people. Portland, Oregon has the most resources in the nation. Oregon has the most resources in the nation. So if you don't have connected, then you need to put yourself in that place, and don't always assume that your job is going to give it to you. Your job is only required to give you so much. It depends. Make a deal with yourself, decide where you want to go in regards to the social service world, and then you're going to have to do some extra work on the job and outside the job to get those skills, and that's just the bottom line. Otherwise, you're just not going to, there's very few people that have been able to just come to work and be like, oh, this is all I'm going to be able to sustain for years on end. And this is the only thing that's going to fill my vessel. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. So with that being said, I hope that makes sense. Safety. So safety on the job is really key too. Again, I mentioned this yesterday. I have a real problem, me personally, and this is not anybody else, this is me. I have a problem with the word safe because I don't really feel like I can't make anybody else safe. I don't even want that responsibility. However, what I can do is I can support you being safer. And I like that, because then it resolves me of all that responsibility of keeping you safe. And then I'm being forth and trustworthy and assertive in what I can do for you. I cannot keep you safe. I don't want that responsibility. However, I can keep you safer. Now, how can we work together to get this happening? And that is very clear with the guest. The guest can receive that. The guest can say, okay, this person is not going to take on that challenge. And it's also setting boundaries. The guest goes, oh, I might not be able to push too far with this one. I might not be able to get over on this one. So then that also prevents the staff shopping. You know what I'm saying? So that's another thing that comes up. So, never carry weapons. And I understand, talk to your manager and talk to your supervisor if you have any questions in regards to that, because I understand it could be a very scary situation. Everybody has trauma. Talk to your supervisor and manager. In general, don't carry weapons. Commit yourself to being well prepared physically and intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. Figure out your own routine, your own rhythm on how you can fill your vessel in each one of these ways on a daily basis, whether you're at work or not, whether it's 5 minutes or 2 minutes. Find your own little regimen that makes you okay and that you can tap into when things get overwhelming or when you feel unsafe. Refrain from imposing your moral or religious beliefs on others. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. Everybody should practice. As long as everybody's safe, then everybody should be able to, to express themselves as they want to. But our job in our profession, when we walk in, is not to, impede or impose our moral or our religious beliefs on anybody. That's not our job. We can listen and we can hear and we can validate, that is another person's view and another person's expression, but that's not our job for us to be going in and imposing our moral beliefs on anyone. Refrain from having social and emotional relationships with guests outside of work. And I know that For folks that have lived experience, this can come kind of tricky. For people of color in Portland, this could kind of become kind of tricky because the communities are so small. And we're going to run into each other, and not all of us stay in the trenches for so long. So what does that look like as some of us move up and some of us fall off? I mean, these are the dynamics that we have, and that goes for all populations. But I mean, like, don't refrain from having social, emotional relationships with folks that are unprofessional. And if worst case scenario, I mean, like, do not have an emotional relationship or sexual relationship with your guests. Bottom line, don't do it. That's just that. If you tend to want to start a relationship with somebody that's your coworker, there's rules and regulations around that, and I would highly suggest that you look into that before y'all go franchising around. Because there's a way that you can still remain in the relationship and still work for Multnomah County, but not be in such proximity where you can protect yourself from getting into a situation that you don't need to get into. And I hope I said that as trauma informed in the appropriate way, but like, it's really not worth it. It's really not worth it. Please do not use your own home to shelter guests. Agency separation, I use agency separation, y'all use exclusion. Agency separations are good to sometimes, and going to your home is bad. Do not ever ask anybody to come to your home by any means necessary. Don't engage in sexual activity with clients. Don't accept cash for clients. Guests, do not give them cash. Do not accept it. Do not give personal gifts. Do not accept personal gifts. And never use alcohol or illicit drugs on the job. Like, these are the things that will keep you safe. Okay? Does that, you see how it's safe? Okay? In the protocol book, it says, these are the things that are going to keep you safe. I'm trying to tell you, safer. Your mentality needs to be safer. You start changing that in your brain, and you're going to start operating differently. You're going to start maneuvering. You're going to start engaging and being able to advocate for your needs and other people's needs more. We're winding down. No worries, just a couple more slides. Oh yeah, we're done almost. Okay, so really, you know what I'm saying? It would be great for us just to take a moment and for us to be able to share, you know, what are we doing to take care of ourselves? What are you doing to replenish your vessel? It was funny, my brother, I said, you know, I got to replenish my vessel. My brother said, and he's grown like me. He said, your vessel. And I said, he's like, what's your vessel? And I was like, this vessel. He's like, you mean that's what this is? I had this for 39 years and I got a vessel? And he's like, oh, now I know what to do with it. Treat it like a vessel. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had never, and I never thought about my body as a vessel. You know, they tell, but you have vessels, you know, you pour it out, you got to replenish your vessels. You know what I'm saying? Think of yourself as a vessel when you're doing this social service work. You are a cherished vessel. This is the hardest work ever, and we are out here doing it during COVID. And I don't know, but I get sparked off of stuff like that. Like, no matter how hard it gets, I'd rather be doing this, working with the people, than doing anything else. And so, how are y'all taking care of yourselves? You know
I second that.
Thank you, Guy. You want to share how you're taking care of yourself? No pressure.
Yes, family, you know, being around family and people who are around my loved ones. I love going to the beach. That's one of my biggest things I love to do. And just being around family and family and friends. That's really important. That's, you know, and that's important for me. So that, you know, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Mackenzie.
I'm really big on naps. I take naps, and they're like magic for me. So naps are my avenue.
Oh, you're so lucky. I can't take a nap for nothing in the world. I don't know, man. I swear I've never been able to do that. Central, I see your hand still raised. Y'all got something?
I walk. I make sure I walk 3 miles every day.
Get it. Where you be? Look, get it.
Every day.
That's awesome. Look, I was on the Aerodyne. What was it, yesterday morning? I was so scared at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got on the Aerodyne, Trish, when I removed my computer from the aerodynamic, I was on there for 99 minutes. I did 4.2 miles. And I still had a lot of energy, but I felt great. You know what I'm saying? So like try something and just see if it works. I wasn't planning on walking 4.2 miles, but now that I can do it, you know what I'm saying? I'm willing to try it again. So thank you for sharing, Trish, but that's dedication. 3 miles every day. What are some other folks?
Hey, Alexandra, can I throw something in there?
Yeah, Chris, of course.
Yeah, I just popped in. I like the vibes I'm seeing right now. Guy, what you're talking about, with family and everything. One other thing that, comes to mind is this work is not our salvation. I'm not trying to be religious, but this work isn't our salvation, right? Life exists outside of the work that we are doing here. And when you make it your salvation and you make it something that comes to the core of you and something bad happens, you don't know what to do with yourself, okay? So let me reframe things one time here. So we talk about burnout, okay? Let's talk about it as moral injury, right? So you went in here thinking that you're going to save the world and help people, and then someone calls you, the N-word or punches you in the face. That's moral injury. Yeah, you're burned out, but that's moral injury. Don't turn those jackal ears on yourself and start beating yourself up like, oh, I couldn't do this. This was too hard. It was moral injury. Do not make this work your salvation.
Dang, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Anyone else want to share? Central, your hands up. I wasn't sure if you did want to share. I mentioned that before.
Hector here. Yeah, I kind of like escape to the woods like every 2 weeks and go like meditate in the woods or go practice my martial arts in the woods. I have a few like areas in the Tillamook forest that I like to escape to. And that's how I take care of myself while doing this job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the things that I forgot to do or I just now learned is being able to, I'm the type of person, I have an extremely hard work ethic, probably because I didn't have a choice for that for a very long time, but I'm used to working 365 days a year. And one of the things that was extremely hard for me to do is to take time off. It was extremely hard for me to take time off. And one of the things that it's taken me 8 years for me to actually be able to feel comfortable putting in a vacation like 2 months or 3 months in advance. That's how long it's taken me to build up. I mean, that just speaks to like that's real. It's hard to take care of yourselves when you haven't had an opportunity or when society has told you that you don't deserve the opportunity or when you haven't had resources to opportunities, you begin to believe that. You know what I'm saying? And so then therefore that's where you get stuck in. Really cool resources that folks should check out. Body scans, body scripts. I send out those. I've shared a couple. They're like 5-minute ones. Maybe since y'all have 30-minute rollovers, how about y'all pop in one of those 5-minute body scripts? You know what I'm saying? They're YouTube things and they're actually culturally specific, trauma-informed body scripts. So it's not well, I won't say anything because I was about to make a judgment call, but it's pretty cool because I tried it. And usually most of the stuff that I do, I would try it first. So because I want to know the knowledge too. But like, I'm usually going to try something before I share it out with you. There's lots of coping with anxiety during COVID-19 stuff that's out there. Caring for children. I know that for us that have babies or that are care providers, schools, it's been hard. Our babies have been where they are, whether they're at home or they had to be home because of school. And now they're talking about, in addition to the vaccine, they're talking about the kids going back to school. Like, be thinking about ways that y'all can be taking care of yourself and replenishing your vessels as like decisions are made in regard. And then as you have to make your own personal decisions, like it's tough because you're making your own personal decisions in your life and you're trying to survive. And then you have to come to work and you have this extremely stressful job. So any resources, it doesn't have to be resources in self-care directly related to homeless service providers. What are the resources and care that you need based on the folks that are in your family or that you are providing for outside of the workplace? And then maybe provide them the tips so then they're not stressed out, so then they don't stress you out. So all this, the same stuff I share with my guests is usually something I didn't access and that I shared with my family member. So then everybody's getting wraparound services. And that's how I organize wraparound services. I'm a walking around service. Steps for healthy relationships, that's also a good one. And then aging and disability resources, please be in tune with those type of resources. That helps everybody, regardless of age. You always want to prepare for the future. Your body is aging as we speak. We're pretty much done, y'all. There is this video, Beyond the Cliff by Laura Van Der Noot. Y'all recognize this lady? There's a book called Trauma Stewardship, and this lady, she's fire. I watched her. She came to Portland, and this is a 20-minute video, and it's really good. I would like to play it, and then we could just end for the day, and I can kind of package up all of our stuff and then like send this out with a sweet package, or I can just recap what we've done and then we can end for the day. What are your thoughts? It is 20 minutes, but it does give. So she's a social worker, social service worker, and she explains very shortly about the effects of trauma, being a social service worker, and how you can sustain and what the importance of that is in a very short, concrete video. But then I also know that folks can't really hear the audios. So how do y'all want to handle this?
Let's do the video.
Can I get a consensus? Thumbs up? Yes, no? All right, cool.
Video.
Okay, cool. So remember, just real quick, all of these videos, quick reference sheets, everything will be provided for you all, okay? I will try to package it up to make sure that everything is really soft and sweet and nice and clear and clean. And so y'all will have all these materials to your for your use. So please watch them again. Every single time I hear something the first time, it kind of something soak in. But I've watched this video literally 5 times, and every single time something sinks in, and it means something different because I've grown since the last time I watched the video. And I've probably practiced on some of these things like crisis intervention and trauma-informed care, cultural resiliency, and racial justice since the last time I watched the video. So I just want to challenge y'all by choice. I've really enjoyed being with you all this afternoon, and I will push play.
18 years ago, I found myself standing on top of a very tall cliff, having what I would only come to recognize many years later as a near psychotic break. It would be fair for you to ask if I had always been that on edge, and the answer is no. But as many of you I imagine can relate to, how I found myself on top of that cliff on that particular day was by way of a very long road. Like so many others, my childhood was filled with a lot of love and many challenges. Life came into particularly sharp focus for me when I was 10 years old. My mom, who was the healthiest person any of us knew, went into a doctor's appointment for what everyone thought would be a diagnosis of pneumonia at the worst, and returned home having been told she had a very rare form of lung cancer. They gave her 3 months to live. She lived for 3 years, much of that time with one lung. And so she died when I was 13, and the sun rose and set with my mom, and I entered into my adolescence feeling if continuing to live wasn't going to be impossible, it was going to be highly improbable. So I navigated high school with a lot of overachieving. I spent my days getting straight A's and working 3 jobs, and I spent my nights planning on how I could end my life without causing my older brother, who'd always been my protector and my role model, too much pain. I did make it through high school, and then I landed in college, and I found myself sitting in one of those very large lecture halls, and my professor at the time, Professor Richard Applebaum, was talking to us about suffering on this one particular morning. In particular, he was talking about homelessness. And he was talking about it in a way that allowed time to stand still for me. He was building on what so many traditions have taught us for the beginning of time, really, that in life, it is said, there's equal measure of brutality and beauty, of pain and pleasure, of annihilating moments and of sublime moments. And yet there was a way he was talking about it, this whole conversation about equanimity, that was completely new to me. During those 3 years when my brother and I were taking care of our mom, we were surrounded by a number of very, very loving people and kind people who
gave us a lot of support for appearing to be stoic, for seeming to be strong, and for holding it all together. And what Professor Applebaum was talking about on that morning is when one is engaged in suffering, there is so much more to it than holding it all together. So what I knew was I wanted more of whatever he had going on. So I went up to him after class, asked how I could help. He scribbled on a piece of paper the name and number of our local homeless shelter's director. And that's when I started volunteering at age 18, spending the nights regularly volunteering in a homeless shelter. I went on to work with all forms of trauma, and always within this kind of larger backdrop of systematic oppression and liberation theory. And what I knew was that I was so grateful that I had found something that made sense to me and that I felt passionate about. What I had no idea and wouldn't know for years to come was to what degree, having borne witness to the suffering of my mom and then the subsequent years of bearing witness to so much suffering with so many people, to what degree that was taking a toll on me. And this is something that wise people have passed down for a long time, and we know more and more about now because of the advances in neuroscience and the wonderful research that many of my esteemed colleagues are doing. But at the time, I had no idea about this cumulative toll. So one of the ways that the toll can show up is for those of you who are doing work. There are folks who do work, and as a result of the work you do, you might be exposed to things, either because of the content of what you're doing, but what a lot of my colleagues say is like, look, the work itself is the least of my concern. It's all my colleagues who put me over the edge, right? So sometimes the toll is because of the work. Sometimes the toll is because of the caretaking we do on our lives. Here she's saying, I feel like I need you less and less, Mom, now that I can make myself feel guilty all on my own. So much of the toll we feel is because many, many, many of you are caretaking in your personal lives. You're caretaking those around you. You're at home tending for folks who are returning from wars, folks who are ill, people who are in need in the community. Sometimes the toll we feel is because of the suffering of other living beings. This is Chris Jordan's wonderful work. And sometimes it's because of what's going on ecologically on the planet itself. This is the work of Vance Friedenberg. He's one of the leading scientists looking at the sixth mass extinction. But what we know is that when humans are exposed to suffering, hardship, crisis, trauma of humans, other living beings, or the planet itself, there's a cumulative toll. And there's a toll on us individually. There's a toll on your immediate relationships. There's a toll organizationally for those of you who have this exposure in your work. Institutionally, systemically, we see it in movements we're a part of. We're seeing it throughout all of our communities and society as a whole. She's saying, speaking personally, I haven't had my day, and I've never met any dog who has. The other piece of this that's very important, at least when I do this work, is it's always held in a larger context of systematic oppression. You know this so well, but a reminder that the degree to which you're impacted by the lives you're living and the work you're doing is intimately tied to the fact that we're in a society with so much supremacy. And if we're in a society where there's no oppression, there's no racism, sexism, homophobia, heterosexism, ageism, ableism, classism, and xenophobia, so much of the suffering we are tending to wouldn't exist, and the remaining bits that exist in life, we would all be affected by that so differently. I have no doubt that all of you have so much more insight and personal awareness than I did back in the day, and that for those of you who know what this toll is, and when you feel this toll, either because of what's going on in your personal lives or on the job, that you're able to identify it. But I was not at all able to identify it. So it was about 10 years into my career when a critical mass of people started kind of getting up in my face doing that, hey, Laura, you're tripping. You should take some time off. And I'm sure somebody said something earlier than 10 years in, but I was very stubborn and successfully ignored them. But 10 years in is when there was a critical mass of people up in my grill really begging me to look at this. And what some of you will appreciate is that a number of those people were clients I was serving, which you can imagine is always so disconcerting. You know, survivors of domestic violence living in a shelter who can't go anywhere, begging me not to come to work. So people were doing their due diligence, right? But at the time, I was so arrogant, I was incredibly cocky, and I was entirely self-righteous. I was doing God's work. You could either step up and help me do God's work, or you could step off. But I was definitely not going to have a conversation with you about how I was affected by my job. And like many of you possibly, I was raised in a number of traditions that implicitly and explicitly communicated, if you care enough about what you're doing, if you are down with your cause enough, if it matters enough to you, you're going to suck it up. So this whole conversation about how to sustain was not something I was engaged in. But finally, the pressure mounted. I caved. I didn't take any significant time off, but compromised. We took a short trip, went to visit our family who lived in the Caribbean. So on a particular day, we head out as a family on this hike. We get halfway through our hike, and we summit where we wanted to summit, and there we are standing on the top of these cliffs, right? So the family's gathered around, tiny Caribbean island, standing on the top of these cliffs, looking out. The first thing I remember thinking was, this is so beautiful. The second thing I immediately thought was, I wonder how many people have killed themselves by jumping off of these cliffs. And at the time, I worked at Harborview Hospital, which you know is the level 1 trauma center for the whole Northwest. So it wasn't my own suicidality at play anymore. It was because of the years of bearing witness to other suffering that naturally, instinctually, one starts triaging, of course, right? So you start thinking, where would the helicopter land? Does the helicopter land on the cliff? And would you belay down to the person on the beach? Would the helicopter actually land on the beach? Is there a level 1 trauma center? Do they fly to Miami? Would they stop you in customs? You know, you kind of go through the whole thing, right? So I said this out loud because I was merely presuming I was just giving voice to inevitably what was going to come up in a family conversation. Because who stands on top of a cliff and does not wonder where the nearest level 1 trauma center is? But apparently in my family.
Oh, I'm done. I can't. It stopped. I'm so sorry. I can't. Here, I will try to.
It was getting good.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. And then maybe y'all can copy and paste it and watch it after this. It's really good, and I'm sorry that the media. But she goes on to speak about her journey, like realizing like she worked too hard, trauma, and how it the residual effects over a lifetime. So I apologize. I'm so sorry. And with that being said, we have kind of come to the conclusion of this workshop. We've covered a lot today. I really appreciate that we were able to start off with Chris and Chris's expertise. I love the defensiveness and pushback, but he also spoke to crisis and how crisis evolved and is managed. Situational awareness, like being mindful of what's around you, your body presence, your stance, the purpose of the stance, why it's important, why do folks use these stances, the importance of like the questioning, the refusal, release, intimidation, and tension reduction models. We also talked about emergency protocols, knowing the importance of how stigma shows up. I mean, we only talked about stigma, mental health stigma, but being mindful of how stigmas, also known as stereotyping, can impede us from doing good social service work. Also recognizing that there are various emergency protocols that we should be aware of. And although very different, different in different spaces, being aware of how you should handle situations, what's the protocol, what's your level of expertise, what additional trainings or expertise do you need, who on your team has that level of expertise, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and who's present and willing and prepared. And then Mia came and looped us in on debriefing and the importance of debriefing, being able to communicate what happened, what worked, what didn't work, what can we do better, what are we willing to try differently, and being able to have a safe space within our teams to compartmentalize. And then we also talked about the importance of having spaces outside of our teams to be able to process these incidents that happen. We were able to mention and talk about some community resources and the benefits of knowing the community, the resources that are in our community, in addition to the communities, the different types of resources that each community partner provides, as well as ways to access those resources. And really depending on the knowledge that our guests have and that we have amongst ourselves is key with de-escalation. I think that pretty much covered it, other than the last one, which is remaining safe on the job. So knowing who your key points in contact need to be, whether that's internal joint office, that's Katie, your site leads, Donald, Donald, Brittany, and Jordana, if those, are those your point in contacts? And then who else are your point in contacts, whether that be internal central HR, or whether that be an equity team, or whether that be somewhere internal within the Multnomah County. Please make sure that you know these resources. So then in case you are in need of a resource or in crisis, or your teammate is in crisis, then you'll be able to share these resources and you'll be able to help. And then we talked about sustainability. You know, actually we talked about professionalism and ethics first. So it's really important for us to remain professional. We do work for a government entity, and in order for us to keep our jobs, then there are certain responsibilities that we must do. There are some best practices that I share today as social service workers, because we do work with the most vulnerable populations. Then we have to be mindful and stick to our boundaries and know right from wrong. We are trauma-informed care is preventing re-traumatizing somebody else, and the last thing we want to do is re-traumatize somebody. That can lead to a conflict, that can lead to a crisis, that can lead to an escalation. To prevent that, then let's just try to use trauma-informed care. And then I think we talked about sustainability and safety. I think I just repeated myself because I'm exhausted. But with that being said, I think we covered a lot. Am I missing anything? Or do folks have any feedback? I did have a Jamboard that I was gonna. Here, I'll put the thing in.
Alexandra, just widespread appreciation for you and what you've pulled together over the last 2 days. Firm handshakes to you, your story, and all that you bring to the table. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you again. This was amazing. You guys answered every question that I needed. Christopher, thank you. Alexandra, thank you. Maya, you guys did awesome. I really appreciate this. And I have a new name. It's called Beacon of Hope. So I'm looking forward to continuing on this awesome journey. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And this is De-Escalation 1. So I am always willing to improve and get better. And trust me, I will get better. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna scope the material. So thank you so much for letting me be vulnerable. I was extremely nervous, and I will get better. I always challenge myself to get better. And thank you for the kudos. So I left the Jamboard in there. If you click on that, and I try to give everybody access, and I made sure a couple times. If you click on there, if you want to just plop in one takeaway, and then if you click over, so a Jamboard pretty much is just a platform that you can use, and you can like create art on it. You can use little stickies and everything. You can do whatever you want to do with it. There's a couple different pages. The first page is, it'd be great if you could note that you got something out of this. That would be good for me. Okay, let me know that you got something. Okay. The next thing is there's thank yous. So the facilitators did this for me. They did a 100 for me. I was able to pull together Rhea. I was able to pull together Chris. I was able to pull together Donald. And I was able to pull together Mia. And they did that out of total respect. I mean, I'm pretty sure they had some job responsibility. But like, they came together to pull this off. And so like, please, if anything, I appreciate y'all saying thank you to me. But they also like went above and beyond and knew and heard the call. They heard your call. They didn't just hear my call, they heard your call. So this was a combined effort here, and I cannot move forward and respectfully without showing respect to those that have supported me. So please put a star, insert, you can download a picture as long as it's appropriate, like make it beautiful, and like, let's share this, and that'll be our first de-escalation. Also, like, if y'all are interested in participating in some type of like role play or any type of like participating in like these type of activities, because this will be ongoing learning, then like, let's do it. Y'all want to role play? Like, let's figure it out. Let's create our learning materials that y'all need, using y'all, the people that are really in it. Those are the most effective. You'll learn skills as you're doing it. I mean, and I think it'd be great, but y'all got to handle your business. Whatever Brittany, Donald, and Katie, y'all got to handle that first, and then come over here to swing my way. But you know what I'm saying? Like, at least send me a kite or something and let me know what your ideas are, and then I'll make it happen. Okay? I appreciate all of you, and I'm so happy, and I feel so honored to have at least made it this far.
Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
I'm glad to hear your voice, Patrick. You're doing all that.
I know.
I thought I was going to have to do some crisis intervention. Man, you're doing a lot of thinking over there.
No, I do.
Yeah, Patrick can talk. Patrick can talk.
Always picking on me over here, man.
No, I didn't mean to pick on you. It's all good.
No, you good. I appreciate it. This was a really, really awesome class, and yeah, I thank you for everything and your time.
All right, cool. So things will be sent out next Monday. I got you. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point in time, and I really appreciate it. And you know, I got the next de-escalation is coming up. We'll talk about that, and we can go from there. I appreciate all of you. I have to stay on the line until all of you exit, but please take care of yourselves and continue to speak greatness into yourself and each other, okay? And be good ancestors.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Sorry, I said your name wrong, Jordana.
I've done that before too. I keep doing that. Actually.
That's all right. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you for the
All right,
ancestors.
thank you so much.
You made it happen.
Yeah, I did. I can't believe it.
You did great.
Go get some rest.
Do I look like I know. I was like, man, I wanted to wash my makeup off in the middle of the thing. I was like, that's gonna be too. Oh yeah, I know it's nervous, but I'm happy I experienced it. You know, I'm gonna learn from this, and it's gonna make me better. And I know that folks got some information, and that's good. You know what I'm saying? Like that makes me feel good. So I appreciate the support, y'all.
Stop presenting. Do you have time to check in?
Oh yeah, I didn't even see. I'm trying to tell you, this old Mare ain't what she used to be. I don't know if Adam is still there. I think maybe Adam might have walked away.
I mean, he has some stuff to do.
We can actually, you know what? We can exit
And
as long as, like, I'll send you an invite. Let's just exit this and I'll send you an invite real quick.
Good work.